Evening, I call to order this regular meeting of the Verona Township Council on Monday, March 11th, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please read the Open Public Meetings Act compliance statement?
The notice requirement of the Open Public Meetings Act is satisfied with respect to this meeting of the Township Council. The time is along with the public telephone call-in information. Said notice and meeting agenda was posted in the municipal building and paper to the town. The start time of the agenda j.org/council meetings. A public comment. Instructions on how to.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Hunt. Here. Councilwoman McGrath. Here. Councilman Rowe.
Here.
Deputy Mayor.
Present.
Mayor Tambora.
Present.
Mayor, it is Township Manager Joe Yorko, Township Attorney Brian Aloya, Township Manager Kevin O'Sullivan, myself, Municipal Clerk Jennifer Kearney.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. I'll start with the mayor's report today. First off, it was a pleasure to attend the State of the County address 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago. County Executive Vincenzo did a great job outlining projects that the county has embarked on and is planning to embark on in the future. We're of course pleased that he announced the improvements to the Verona Park recreation facilities to include pickleball courts. It's something that I announced a half ago, I suppose, in this meeting. So thank you. Every member of the council was present. So it was nice to provide a good showing, and the county was appreciative of all of us being there. It was a pleasure last week to participate in Read Across America. That's one of my favorite things to do. I got to read to Miss Graves and Ms. Ellenbogen's third grade classes at Forest Avenue School, which was a phenomenal experience. I got to answer some questions afterwards. The highlight was the students' significant disappointment that I did not make $2 million a year or have a private plane, but they will be voters soon enough. So it was great. I appreciate Forrest for inviting me for that and bringing us out. I had the joy also of attending the Boy Scouts Troop 2 Pancake Breakfast this past weekend at the Presbyterian Church. The Scouts always do a great job, and it's a pleasure really seeing everybody. It's really one of those community events that's tough to miss. Councilman Rome and I were treated to a tour of the Presbyterian Church thrift store after that, which is a must-see if you've never been there. Thank you to Verona resident and friend Sandy Crawford for making sure that they were open for us to go do that and suggesting that we do that. So please check that out. They do great work, and we will have them at a council meeting in the future to talk about the charitable work that they're doing. This is Women's History Month this month, so it's great to recognize all the women who make a difference, have made a difference, continue to make a difference in our lives. I especially want to recognize my mother, Andy Huber, who is the consummate public servant and volunteer in her community, and all of the women in Verona who make our town great. It is also Irish American Heritage Month, and I was pleased to participate in our flag raising immediately before this meeting. And thank you to the representatives from several different agencies and organizations, and to our bagpipers participating tonight. That was available on live stream. You can always go back and watch the film of that. And happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody on Sunday. I will be participating in the North Jersey Chamber of Commerce Meet with the Mayor's event on Friday, April 5th at the Wilshire Grand Hotel. It is a free event with free registration. Breakfast is included with several sponsors. So if you would like to attend, please do. There's still some space, from what I understand. Next, at our next meeting, we will be having presentations of 2 of our remaining street signs that honor fallen veterans in Verona, the Verona Heroes program. Rob Caruso has coordinated that program for many years. We'll be here. We're going to have one family in person. They get a duplicate street sign of the one that is actually displayed in town. And then we'll be doing a presentation virtually for family who lives in Florida. So I encourage everybody to be here, and I thank Mr. Caruso for his assistance with that. I had a wonderful call last week with Hannah Mori, who is Senator Booker's state director, to discuss our public safety emergency services complex building. The senator's office was very gracious in providing us time and support, and Senator Booker has sponsored many emergency services related projects in the past. Ms. Mori and her appropriation staff will be meeting with the administration and myself and the deputy mayor tomorrow to assist us in making the project as attractive as possible to the committees that it could potentially be presented to. So I thank them for the quick turnaround on that meeting and for their support, and I look forward to that. Our LD40, Senator Corrado, and Assemblyman Barlas and DePhillips have agreed to write letters of support, a joint letter of support for the project to pass along to our federal legislators that can be attached to the application. And as they've seen the project, this is very important. They are also on board with that. And we keep moving along with all of those things, reaching out to anybody we can for support on that. This final note, since we have quite a few things on the agenda tonight, just wanted to remind the council of parliamentary procedure that requires everybody who wishes to speak to be recognized by the presiding officer, and also that we direct all comments to the presiding officer and not to one another. And that concludes my report. Mr. Coltrane, would you one more thing after Mr. Coltrane's?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rumor is that there may be a plane in your budget, so if you do, I can use a ride somewhere once in a while. Just joking.
And that's on record now.
I know it's on record, so I just said I was joking. Otherwise, we would all be in trouble. And you did steal my thunder about the state of the county. Thank you all for coming and participating. It's always good to see local government at our events. And speaking of events, this coming Saturday, there is a job fair at the zoo from 10 to 2. The pay is $15.13 per hour, and you must be 18 years old to participate. They do have volunteer positions for people who are younger than 18. So hopefully, we're going into the hot season of parks and everything else that's going on. So I just handed out the Cherry Blossom Festival, and it starts on Saturday, August 6th. April 6th. It's the Cherry Blossom Bike Challenge, and it's from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the Oval in the North Division. And then a very nice run is Sunday, April 7th at 10 a.m. It's the Cherry Blossom 10K run. And we did mail these out to a lot of the citizens throughout the county. And please put it on the website if possible. The other thing is, I just ran into the chief at a swearing in to your chief, and we were discussing, I had a meeting with the county executive today, the parks director and the county engineer, discussing Verona entrance way to Verona Park. So they are discussing, I don't think anything has progressed, but at least there's discussion on it. And also, I think the county engineer has applied for a couple of grants, which is a long time coming. And hopefully in the future, we receive those grants. That's about it for me this evening. Any comments or questions?
Any questions for county liaison? Comments? Ready,
Please, thank the county for that, looking at the entrance to Verona Park and any work they do on it. It's greatly appreciated.
I think when the chief gets back to you, he may have a couple of points to discuss with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One last item, as we started with Mr. Diarco's joining us, I believe, the township has, we are committed to supporting our National Guard and our reservists. We have a statement of support, and I'll be reading, our clerk made it into a proclamation as well. Our statement of support will be hanging downstairs by the wall of honor down on the first floor of the building, and there's signature, and it is, I'll read the proclamation that is associated with it. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Verona hereby recognizes the Guard and Reserve are essential to the strength of our nation and the well-being of communities. Whereas the highest American tradition, the patriotic men and women of the Guard and Reserve serve voluntarily in an honorable and vital profession. And whereas the men and women of the Guard and Reserve trained to respond to their community and their country in time of need. Whereas the brave and selfless men and women of the Guard and Reserve deserve the support of every segment of our society. Whereas if these volunteer forces are continued to serve our nation, increased public understanding is required of the essential role of the Guard and Reserve in preserving our national security. And whereas we join other employers in pledging that we fully recognize, honor, and comply with the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Acts, USERRA, will provide our managers and supervisors with the tools they need to effectively manage those employees who serve in the Guard and Reserve. And therefore be it proclaimed that I, Dr. Christopher Tamboro, Mayor of the Township of Verona, and on behalf of my fellow council members, employees of the township, residents of Verona, appreciate the values, leadership, and unique skills service members bring to the workforce and encourage opportunities to employ guardsmen, reservists, transitioning service members, and veterans as we continually recognize the support of country service members and their families in peace and crisis and in time. The witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the Township of Verona, New Jersey, to be affixed this 11th day of March, 2024. Thank you, Mr. Diarco, for ensuring that we show our support. And I have had several friends from Verona who have participated in the National Guard who have been deployed to combat zones in recent years. So hopefully, if any of our employees are in that situation, we will obviously support them. And to transition to you, sir.
Yeah. And thank you, Council, Mayor and Council. As a veteran, I do appreciate that support of the Guard and Reserve. That takes care of item 19 on my agenda. So we now can remove. Everett Field is in final edits. Kevin will report on the grant applications that are in and pending and progress on that. That's under the section that your department heads are working with Millennium on. Friends of Verona Park, I had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Neal. It is officially formed. We discussed the support of Verona Parks in the future and applications for Verona Parks, and we did discuss support of Everett Field. It's a 501c3 for the public's information, and they can generate funding from private and corporate supporters, which would be excellent. The Emergency Services Building public information is continuing with that. On the 19th, I didn't attend the county execs meeting because the team was at the Claridge doing a presentation on the entire complex, the same thing you saw here and that the public saw publicly. That was very well organized by the Claridge. It encompassed a Zoom meeting with all of the residents. We fielded a number of questions and gave us some insight into questions that we didn't think of at the time, and we're making some adjustments, which will be preceding our final total public meeting that we'll start to arrange at the community center. The next meeting that the team has is with Verona Lions, which will be there tomorrow night, going through the process a little abbreviated rather than the hour-long presentation. But we'll go through with the Lions also. Item number 5 will be discussed by the council. I will stay on my agenda. Kevin will handle a number of items in his report to try and save time. I'll just keep skipping through items. The street paving report complete study was done by Boswell Engineering. We now have it. It's a plan to handle the streets in an organized manner based on their deterioration, age, etc. And as you're aware, we'll be doing infrastructure underneath first before we do the roads, which you should be doing. And that will be also published on the website once it's finally accepted by the council. So comments by the council on that report would be appreciated, and we'll get it to those comments to Boswell Engineering also. CDBG project applications are in. Budget is tonight, so I'm going to speed through my report. I did send to the superintendent of schools the draft interlocal, for lack of a better term, of shared service agreement and the list of items and an attachment on those that went over to the superintendent. And hopefully we'll get some answers shortly.
I beg your pardon, if I may.
Yes.
So I have not seen a copy of this agreement that was circulated to the superintendent. Have my colleagues seen this agreement? So would it be possible for us to see a draft?
I will. It was drafted up from your previous agreement. So I literally sent it to the Board of Ed first, the superintendent. So because I had a pre-meeting with them, I get their comments and we'll have their comments and the report for you to address. But I will send it out to the entire council with the addenda.
That would be very helpful.
I'm sorry. That was item number 23. I'll get that to you. If there is another meeting coming up on a flood control advisory board, you do have an appointment on it tonight. That is moving well. The 2 other communities, Little Ferry and Woodland Park, are anxious to get their resolutions passed also.
Little Falls.
Woodland,
Yeah, you just have Little Ferry.
I'm sorry, Little
County.
Little
I
Falls.
think.
Sorry, I did, and I put it that way in my report. But that's moving by. I was just test to make sure everybody's reading this agenda list. And unless you have any questions on any specific item in there, please do.
With regard to the flood control board, I have not been advised of any public meetings.
They
So
do
this
set,
is okay. Thank you. Okay.
We have
Yes, Councilwoman?
Thank you. Thank you for the update on the emergency services complex and the socialization and the mayor's report about additional meetings with Cory Booker's office. I would like us to talk further about this in new business, about the process. I do have some questions and concerns, and I just want to make sure we are making sure that the council is where those points of contact or where the council needs to make decisions are in the process. So I would like to discuss it. Thank you.
Yes.
Just the same question on the pavement condition report, that has not been circulated to the council yet, that's still a draft form.
It was circulated.
Council.
Okay, just recording.
Well, we'll resend it again.
I will send it to you right.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, I think Mr. O'Sullivan did circulate a draft of it, but then the overlay of what is the infrastructure work we need to do under the ground, given our condition of our water pipes was not, so it was just on the street condition. I think the next step was kind of an addition. So
that was before the last meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Tweet, I have it.
Thank you. Mr. Russell?
I will also try to be quick with my report. I know there's a long agenda, but I will touch on a number of items. They're all important items, though, I think. We do have our water and sewer rate study, which is wrapping up. We have an ordinance for a public hearing tonight. Tying into the sewer infrastructure, we have Boswell scheduled for the March 25th meeting to present their findings and their assessment of the treatment plant. Based on that presentation and the rate study, the rates being scheduled for adoption tonight, there will be a number of other subsequent steps and capital projects that should launch off of both of those actions. There was a recommendation on residential zoning fees and commercial zoning fees. It was circulated to the council. There was a recommendation made by the zoning official and an assessment of all the neighboring towns. There was a recommendation to adopt zoning fees. All the other surrounding neighboring towns have zoning fees. It is a labor-intensive process to receive and review and approve zoning applications or deny zoning applications. So there was a recommendation to the mayor and council on that. If there's any thoughts or comments, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, we can look to schedule that for an ordinance for introduction at an upcoming meeting.
We could just put that on new business first for a meeting,
Sure.
and then before they introduce it.
Will do.
So I'm sure there'll be some discussion on that.
The water well projects are both advancing. Lynn Drive well should be starting on or about April 1st. The contractor is getting ready to mobilize to the site. We are also advancing the Fairview Avenue well project. That project should be going out to bid within hopefully the next 30 to 45 days. We should be receiving bids in May or June, which should line us up for an award of contract sometime in July. The competitive bidding market and the principal forgiveness offered by the iBank are expected to be benefits for that project as they work for the Lynn Drive project as well. Simultaneously, as we advance the PFAS well rehabilitation project for Fairview Avenue well, we are working with Green Acres on a diversion application for the Fairview Avenue well. Currently, Green Acres is working through some process decisions on how to apply certain legislation that's been adopted. So we're currently waiting for feedback and direction from them before we can advance our component of the diversion application. And then on March 7th, we sat with special counsel regarding ongoing claims related to PFAS class action settlement. We continue to provide documents that are necessary for support of the original good faith estimate for that class action settlement. There is another pool of funding that is also available for additional expenses incurred by the township. So we're pulling all of that information, providing that to special counsel for those filings. Shifting into stormwater, we have a number of stormwater ordinances on the agenda for tonight. We are also simultaneously advancing discussions with subcommittee of the planning board for the municipal stormwater management plan, which is an element of the master plan. We'll need to schedule that for introduction and adoption at some point in the coming months. We continue to have discussions with Blue Acres and East Office of Climate Resiliency. So we're still advancing our conversations with both of those departments. We also are continuing to move forward and push forward on Peckman River stabilization. We're trying to do that in coordination with the Flood Prevention Control Board and the other neighboring towns to make sure that we have a joint effort with both those towns and any state or federal representation that is assisting with that. So we are continuing to advance the Peckman River projects as we can. Parking meter rates, we have an ordinance scheduled for adoption, public hearing and adoption tonight. There's a number of ongoing discussions regarding energy supply. We're advancing our request for local government energy audit. We provided some supplemental information to the BPU for that. Additionally, we're going to have a meeting with a solar consultant on March 26th to review potential solar projects. Sustainable Essex Alliance is also preparing for another round of electrical energy supply bids later this spring. They've been on hiatus just based upon the market, but they are anticipating that it may be a beneficial time to go out to bid for the electrical energy supply through that program. The community playground is another April 1st target date. We're looking for contractor to begin mobilization, and they will be looking to break ground in the coming weeks. We have a number of road projects that are advancing. I know Mr. Diarco mentioned the road assessment. We will look to get that finalized with Boswell and circulated, and then have that placed on the township website. Additionally, we have a number of projects that are already currently underway or about to at different stages of advancement. We've got the Derwent Avenue project. The sewer repairs are complete. We are working with Shade Tree Commission for revised tree recommendations, and we are working with the contractor to get a paving schedule. It should be milled and paved within the coming weeks as soon as asphalt plants and the temperatures warm up to the appropriate temperatures. We have Boston Whitney Windermere. We have a community meeting scheduled for March 20th, and we have notices going out to those neighborhoods to notify them of that. Again, that is another contract where the contractors looking to mobilize on or about April 1st. Douglas Place is going out to bid. We received approval to advertise bids from DOT. So we'll be receiving bids April 2nd, and we should be in position to award at our April meeting, which would line us up for construction through the summer and completion this fall. And then the last road paving project is Linden Avenue. We've discussed that in the past. We have that listed on our capital projects, and that will require capital bonding for the completion of that project. We have a number of grant applications that are either out and we're waiting for responses, or are being drafted and submitted to varying agencies. Among those are a number of applications for Everett Field. We have an application for CDBG. We have an application to Local Recreation Improvement Grant. And we also have a Green Acres application, which we had a public hearing on. Green Acres did get us comments back about a week ago or a week and a half ago. They asked us to expand our application to now include the ADA compliant restroom as part of our grant application. So there's a modified resolution enabling that grant application on tonight's agenda, which expands the dollar value of that grant application, but I would imagine that is a positive sign from Green Acres. There are a number of other grant applications that were submitted and listed in the report. If there's any other questions, I can answer them. The only other item that is on the agenda tonight, which I don't know if it's listed on the agenda, but we do have our planner who has completed a study of Bloomfield Avenue, who will be presenting. There's a resolution on the agenda for tonight that she will need to present on prior to the mayor and council considering that resolution.
Councilman Roman?
Just a couple of things from your report. It does appear you say that Verona PD is ordering parking meter kiosks.
Yes.
Are those? Do we have a time frame on when those will be up and running?
I don't have a delivery time frame from them yet, but there is a sizable lead time. It is usually an 8 to 10 week lead time at the very least, and then it will require a coordinating installation. But I'll get you a more specific installation date from the chief.
Thank you. Sorry to stay on this one, but that one I feel it's like that's just a just do it. So I keep asking.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the effort on that. Also on the road projects, the big thing that I'd like to ask is if there, obviously we're at the very beginning of the season now. If there is any risk, I mean, we keep running into times when our road projects run past the shutdown time, and we see the amount of public displeasure when that happens. And so since we're getting started on these projects, I don't need to say it, but I'm saying if there is any way that we can possibly at least know in advance if a project is ever at risk, and do everything we possibly can to get these completed within the work year so that they don't hang over the winter season, because we've had that happen the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And really, the residents quite rightfully get concerned when that happens.
Understood.
So just please keep us in the loop as to project schedules as those launch.
Yes, will do.
And that's all I have.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
With Verona, are we done with the sewer lines that we're replacing there?
The sewer line replacement is complete. The trench is, it should be receiving a base paving of the trench this week. And then the milling and paving schedule, when we have that from the contract, will be in a few weeks. And the coordination with the shade tree, we will have notice as well.
Thank you. Councilman.
Thank you. I'm happy to report, I just came from the shade tree meeting. They will be sending you a recommendation for shade trees that can fit in the planting strip, recognizing that it would have been better had we cut the sidewalks so that it could have accommodated a larger diameter, because they're very limited on what trees can be planted there, and recognize that these are trees that will not have a 50-year lifespan. They're going to have a 15 to 20-year lifespan. So this was kind of a missed strategic opportunity. This was before you joined our organization, but it is an example of, I think we have to look to the past to make sure that we do better in the future. And Durant may unfortunately be a case study on that. So the Shade Tree Commission is really rocking and rolling, I think, with their new leadership. Carol Thomas was appointed as the chair, and I thank them for all their hard work and volunteerism. So they should be in contact with you shortly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, like. This things. We will do the introduction of the budget. Mr. Fiarco, I believe you preface this and recommend it for next time.
And our CFO is here. So I'll get through that.
Good evening. Before we can do the introduction of the municipal budget, we have to do the cap index ordinance. That allows us, so municipalities are allowed to increase their previous budget this year by 2.5%. That allows us to do an additional 1%, and if we do not use it, we can bank that percentage. So we would have to introduce that cap index ordinance before we can do the introduction of the budget.
For the purposes of saving a little time here, I'm going to open for public comments on all three of the budget related resolutions first.
Okay.
And then we'll introduce one by one.
Okay.
Do we need to move? We need to move this in for discussion on those.
I think so. I'm just gonna call for public comment first and then we'll move them because we gotta do, so we can do them all at once, otherwise we're doing the.
Mayor, on the ordinance, we should have a separate, there is an ordinance, we should have.
A separate. Oh, that's fine. So then we'll do, that's fine, then we'll do them. It's all right. All right, would somebody like to move E1A, the ordinance to approve the cap index? Motion's made by Councilman Roman. Is there a second? I'll second. Second is made by the deputy mayor. At this time, I will open for public comments on this item only. Madam Clerk, would you please read the public participation statement?
From the public wishing to speak on this ordinance for introduction, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button. Monitor, by dialing in by phone, press *9. Person may approach the lectern and once recognized, clearly state only name and township of residence for the record. You're not required. However, if you note that these meetings will be posted on the township's YouTube channel and the addresses will not be redacted for any purpose. You'll have 4 minutes to address the council. There can be no dialogue during this public hearing. Don't wish to speak has been heard. The council may address your.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Seeing no public comment, we'll go to close public comment at this time. Is there any council discussion on the cap index? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
I need
Yes, sorry. Please read the title.
an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank for JSA 48-4-45.14.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamburo,
Yes.
Mayor, EA one is 2024-14. A public hearing will be scheduled for March 25th, and it will be published according to.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move on to E1B, which is the resolution certifying the compliance with NJSA 40A:4-5. Would somebody like to move this resolution?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Roman. At this time, I will call for public comment on this resolution only. Same public comment statement of all. Being no public comment, we'll close public comment. Any council discussion on this resolution? See none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland. Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Mac,
Yes.
Mayor Tamburo.
Yes.
Mayor Resolution E1B will be number 2024-053.
Thank you. The next item is resolution E1C, which is the introduction, of the 2024 municipal budget. Would somebody like to move this very expensive resolution?
So moved.
The motion is made by Councilman Roman. Is there a second? I'll second it. At this time, we'll open for public comment. The same public comment statement applies on this resolution. I'm going to close public comment. Madam CFO, do you have anything to add?
I do not, no.
Well, but you've spoken out the last couple of meetings.
Yes, I think you're
We'll
supposed
give
to
you
be
a
by
break
now.
this time. Is there any council discussion on this?
Just like to thank our CFO, our auditor, our department heads, and our township management, and everyone else that goes into preparing this. Budget season is a several month long endeavor at the minimum. It's a lot of work, and just really appreciate everything that goes into this.
Thank you.
And I reflect those thanks, and I'll have more specific comments on adoption night, but I think you've done an extraordinary job in putting this together despite the rising costs over the past 4 years. Inflation compounded has increased prices nearly 20% plus, which is significant when we're talking about municipal government. When we can't raise taxes
Yes.
much more. And I do like to credit this council for trying to make everything as affordable as possible for our residents. And I think this budget is committed to doing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamburo,
Yes.
Mayor E-1C will be number 2024-054, passes 5-0. It will be published in the March 19th edition of the Star Ledger. Public hearing will be held on April 8th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
See you there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CFO. Mr. Walker, this time, let's do H2M because we don't really have another
Yes.
easy place in the budget, in the agenda for Sam to come up.
Good evening, everyone. So I hope all of you have read the rehabilitation report that I submitted last month. I'll make it very quick, just hit on the main points. I think when I was here in December, we discussed whether that we'll conduct an investigation to see whether the Bloomfield Avenue corridor qualifies as an area in need of rehabilitation as per the local redevelopment and housing law. We went ahead and got contacted the township engineer, your tax assessor to get all the data to see that. And I'll just give you a brief overview on how the process is as per the redevelopment law, where in this case, it's assigned to the governing body to prepare a resolution along with the supporting report, which we've prepared both of this and submitted, which would declare the identified properties as an area in need of rehabilitation. And then this gets referred to the planning board for its review. And within 45 days, the planning board submits its recommendation. They may, which includes any modification. The governing body by law is not bound by these recommendations and may adopt the resolution with or without modifications. And once the proposed resolution is adopted, the entire area gets designated as an area in need of rehabilitation. Now, we have redevelopment areas in the town that has a higher threshold. A rehab area has very separate criteria as per subsection 14 of the redevelopment law, and I'll quickly go through those. The first criteria is a significant portion of structures are in a deteriorated or substandard condition. Criteria 2 is more than half of the housing stock in the delineated area is at least 50 years old. Number 3, pattern of vacancy, abandonment, or underutilization of properties. 4, persistent arrearage of property tax payments. 5th, environmental contamination, which is discouraging improvements. And number 6 is majority of the water and sewer infrastructure in the area is at least 50 years old and in need of repair or substantial maintenance. Now, as per the statutes, you just need to satisfy one criteria. In this case, we surveyed the entire corridor, and it satisfies 2 criteria. Number 1, the housing stock. Majority of the housing stock, 85% of it is more than 50 years old, and actually the range is the year built range from 1884 up to 1969. That's 85% of your housing. Secondly, we reached out to your township engineer, who mentioned that both the water and sewer infrastructure was more than 50 years, 60, 70 years old, and in need of repair. So we attached that as a documentation. You do need to include evidence. And then it's my professional opinion that the entire Bloomfield Avenue corridor satisfies criterion 2, which is more than half of the housing stock in the delineated area is at least 50 years old. And number 6, where majority of the water and sewer infrastructure is at least 50 years old and need of repair or substantial maintenance. So the next step would be that once it gets designated, the township council can grant exemptions and abatement under the short-term 5-year tax exemption and abatement law, which can encourage property owners to rehabilitate or reinvest in their properties. The other thing too is that nothing precludes the governing body in directing the planning board to conduct area in need of rehabilitation for certain portions and adopt redevelopment plan. We could adopt it for the entire area or in a piecemeal basis. So for this evening, my presentation is basically saying that the entire Bloomfield Avenue corridor satisfies the area in need of rehabilitation criteria.
Thank you. Any questions for our planner?
First off, I just want to say thank you both to fellow council members as well as Suzanne and H2M. This is something that I've wanted to see happen for a very long time, and I'm glad that this is on the table now. This has a lot to do with economic development in our community. I've always kind of been of the opinion that one of the things that's holding back the Bloomfield Avenue corridor within Verona, when you look at some of our neighboring towns that have more more activity in the commercial district is our building stock. There are some buildings that are in fantastic shape. I'm glad to see that. There are some buildings that simply have been underinvested in over the years. There are some that are underutilizing their sites. And this is way of encouraging property owners to upgrade the structures in the corridor without overdeveloping the corridor. So that's why I've been in favor of this method of getting there. I'm hoping that this puts the conditions in place to where people are willing to put money into existing buildings. This could be something as simple as doing facade replacements or renovation of the commercial spaces or addition of apartments above or other alterations to the buildings that could potentially improve them, rehabilitating existing housing, any number of things that I would hope that they would do to improve this housing stock. I think would improve both the residential aspects of the corridor as well as its commercial viability. So this is a great step forward. What I would say is that simply passing this is not the end of the battle, that I think at some point we need to engage with property owners. We need to let them know that this opportunity is going to be out there. We need to be continuing sort of our economic development efforts here, and hopefully we can see people start to upgrade these buildings. It'll happen a little bit at a time. People take advantage of this designation, but I think that this is going to be a very positive effort for that corridor. So I really appreciate this starting off here today. So thank you.
Councilwoman Rivera?
Thank you. Mayor, to start off with, I think just in a matter of transparency, I think members of council, if they own property in this particular area, that's going to be an area of need of rehabilitation. It would be good to disclose that now for the public. And then I have some additional comments.
No Councilmember owns land?
As a matter of fact, within the Bluefield Avenue corridor, and I believe it's a C2 zone. So yes, that's.
Thank you. So, Mayor, I am also very glad that we did this study, and thank you. Your analysis was very clear. I have some different opinions of what was just expressed. First of all, I think this is the fact that our housing stock is so old is really a symptom of the fact that our zoning is not working along most of the corridor as identified by our master plan. And so while I am supportive of this effort going forward, we really need to, and my question is really to look at the underlying zoning, because property owners will likely not invest in their properties unless we fix the zoning issues that were identified by the master plan. And so, Mayor, as a governing body, we really need to put that in. What I would like to see is a project plan on when this goes to the planning board, when it would come back, and when are we actually finally going to address some of the zoning issues that we have within some of these zones. To your excellent point, we could make also areas of redevelopment and then redefine the zoning in there. That's another option. But we can also just fix our zoning as defined by the master plan. So that's my first major point. My second point is, I think it's in, while this is great analysis, and I know we have a resolution on the agenda, I think the average public, when they hear all of Bloomfield Avenue is an, the council saying all of Bloomfield Avenue is an area of need of rehabilitation, there is going to be kind of a knee-jerk, maybe emotional reaction. And so I do wonder if it's best for us, Mayor, if we delay the introduction or the passing of this resolution, at least for one meeting cycle, so that we can allow residents to ask some questions before we officially take action and send it to the planning board, where the public will be able to make a lot of comments and ask a lot of questions at the planning board level. Would you agree that the public should be directed to the planning board if they have questions?
So first off, this is a public meeting, right? I've expressed that area in need of rehabilitation has a lower threshold. I can emphasize now, because I'm hoping this is recorded, right? So if any members of the public hear it, they would hear me say and repeat again that having a rehabilitation area does not do anything to your property or your ability to enjoy your property. The governing body is not proposing to come and take your property. In fact, what the area in need of rehabilitation does to any property owner is gives them an additional tool to improve their property. So my personal opinion, I'm not a governing body member, I defer to all of you, but I think that expressing myself in this meeting in a public presentation, I think we have given members of public a chance, should they want to say something. Once it goes to the planning board, I'm sure this whole thing will be discussed there as well, so that it would be a second opportunity for them. And then the third time when you do it comes back to you guys, that would be a third opportunity. So I think my personal opinion is that we have given 3 opportunities to the members of the public. And also there is nothing in the redevelopment statute that has specific, I would say, specific requirements the way it is for a redevelopment study, where there are, because the threshold is so high, they have very stringent noticing requirements. So my opinion is, I leave it to you, but I think we have 3 opportunities for the members of the public to comment. And in fact, most of the times when people comment, it's more because they don't understand. Then once they understand, it's for that you are doing this for their own betterment and improvement. I think, I'll be happy to answer if anyone has questions at the subsequent meetings.
Okay, great, thanks.
I tend to agree with Sam on this. I think one of the things that we can do is use our public information officer to coordinate with Sam's office to put together a brief public statement, just to advise on what this is. And this was on the agenda, the resolution, and I didn't get any comments or questions about this. But I think at this point there are 3 meetings to access. And it would be helpful to get this done soon. I agree that obviously we, with Councilman McGrath, in that we do have zoning issues to fix, but we've had those meetings, that's in the progress. As far as writing the zoning code, this is a first step as well, something that we can do immediately that doesn't take the amount of time and that the rewriting the entire zoning code does. And it may give us some opportunity to get Bloomfield Avenue property owners more interested in investing in the property and then figuring out some of the zoning related problems as we're doing that. I am very supportive of, and this is something obviously we would have to adopt by ordinance, but doing abatements obviously for improvements, because we have not only is our building stock aging, but their facades are too, signage, facades, and things like that. So I would like to get that moving as quickly as possible. But I appreciate your analysis and your work. And I think that you do a great job, Stan, and very clearly explaining the impact on people. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my follow-up question on your statement and yours is, what is the exact timeline on the zoning changes? Is there, and maybe it's a question for Mr. Diarco, do we have a project plan for making the changes to our zoning code and how we're going to approach that? Because again, while I'm hearing very clearly there's an appetite to do property tax abatements, I am very interested in fixing our zoning code per the master plan recommendations.
I can put that in motion, staff. The drafts for you, if that's the council's desire.
I think we've communicated that pretty clearly that that's our desire. And I know that we've spoken with our planner about, we hired Sam's firm for that reason as well. And we had a pretty substantive discussion on what phases we wanted to do and so forth. But I agree. I don't think there should be anything holding us back at this point in getting that done, provided we have all the data and analysis necessary to do it. Correct? No.
The only thing I would clarify is I don't know if we're all 100% in agreement in blanket adopting every single recommendation in the reports simply, but we do need to get legislation in motion to adopt those of them that we are in favor of, and that just may be a discussion as to what goes in and what doesn't.
I think having a draft and going from a draft,
It'll be easier to go.
piece of legislation is obviously the way to go.
If I may, Mayor.
Yes,
We'll look on a comprehensive draft for the council to edit.
Thanks, Nate.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
First, Stan, thank you very much for your work in this detailed report. I think it's very helpful. And I will address the fact that I do own a property within this entire zone. I don't think it's any different, and I'm not conflicted in any way because it doesn't benefit me personally. It's the same thing as once we move forward and get a zoning ordinance put in place. But that would mean that all five of us would have to recuse ourselves on the zoning ordinance because we all live in town and we all own property in town. So just want to clarify that. But thank you very much for your work.
And just so that I'm clear to Councilman Roman, I'm not recommending anything in this report. All I'm saying is I'm setting forth options that the governing body. This report is very technical. It talks about what the statutory criteria is, and my analysis says how it satisfies 2 out of the 6, and then evidence supporting these claims. That's all I'm saying. There are no recommendations to A, B, C, D, but this gives a wider option. So there are different ways that the governing body can go about. A, you may want to adopt a redevelopment plan on portions of this area, or you may want to do, as we had mentioned in the master plan, some changes to the underlying TC zone district. So there are different ways of going about. This will not stop you from doing any of these, the different options.
Just respond. I think just to clarify my comments, I'm in favor of adopting the rehabilitation plan, given the, for that entire corridor. What I was talking about was more the entire change, the master plan, ultimately, that there are a multitude of recommendations for things to do with different zones in the master plan and opportunities we have. And we may choose to do some or fewer of them, but I just, we do need to go down that legislative effort, but we may pick and choose which of the recommendations we implement or alter the recommendations. But I agree that we do need to get to implementing recommendations from within the report. There's just some more debate that needs to go on the council during that process.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Anything else for you, Mr. Diarco?
No, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Diarco. We're going to move on to council member comments. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will echo some of some stuff, but the Boy Scout Troop 2 pancake breakfast this week was, I attended it this past week. I appreciate all the work they do for even their little projects they do in town, help the town of Verona and all their volunteerism, which is just fantastic. And it's great to go to because the way they run it and they sit you down and they take care of you. I think it's a good interaction with, the youth of our township. I also, as stated, the entire council attended the state of the county. It's always, every year, it's something I really try to get to because you really find out a lot of the work that the county does that you don't realize. And it's really amazing to see all the projects and all the money that our county executive spends throughout the county on really good projects that benefit all the residents of the county. I do want to thank Mr. Diarco for putting that proclamation together and reading the proclamation tonight, especially after the events in Texas with the helicopter crash over the weekend. It shows you the risks that those people go through on a daily basis. On a happy note, say happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. I want to mention next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, the 20th at 7 p.m. The Verona Environmental Commission and Sustainable Verona have joined up once again, and they're going to do a recycling webinar. It will be on Zoom, and the town will hopefully be sharing info in the coming week on that. And lastly, for those celebrating Ramadan Mubarak to all those, and enjoy the holiday. That's all I have for you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilman Roman.
Not to be overly repetitive, but I'll just also briefly mention both the Boy Scout pancake breakfast and county executives state of the county. The pancake breakfast, as the deputy mayor said, one of the great things about going to that is getting the chance to interact with all the scouts in particular. They're such nice young men, and they do a wonderful job of putting that event together. And it's nice to be able to spend some time with them and their families. It's a great turnout for that. And then likewise, the state of the county address. the county gets a lot done in an average year, and the amount that they reported to us, the number of buildings that they've put up, the number of community centers they've built, the amount of public works jobs they've done. It's very impressive. And it was nice to see that the county executive sort of pays attention to every corner of what is a very vast county with a lot of different needs in it. But he did an excellent job of summarizing everything that the county does for us, everything that's planned for the year ahead. So that was a great event. Very happy to see it held here nearby in Cedar Grove, and that all of us were able to make it. That's my report for this evening.
Thank you. Councilwoman McGrath.
Thank you. It was an honor to be recognized yesterday for the second annual Women of Impact panel event. The other honorees that were recognized were Kristen Donahue, Allison Mackey, Serena Rivera, and Kate Hartwick. This is an event that was sponsored by our Multicultural Inclusion and Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Verona Public Library. For weeks, they solicited nominations from members of the public for women who lead in volunteerism and in their careers and in service. I was very honored to be on this panel. We really had a fantastic conversation about the opportunities and challenges that women face in leadership and volunteerism in Verona. I want to thank Councilwoman Holland for her attendance and the Deputy Mayor for attending. Mayor, we missed you there, and we do hope that you can attend in the future. It really is a fantastic event. I attended the Shade Tree meeting, as I already mentioned. They discussed at length the Derwent project, the upcoming Windermere Windermere project in terms of which shade trees, will be planted. We talked about Friends of the Verona Parks and about their capital requests. Tomorrow at 7:30, there is a meeting of the Neighborhood Traffic and Safety Committee, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Just because I was called out by name by the councilwoman, I do want to respond that first, my schedule is not checked by committees that plan events before the dates are announced, and I did have a pre-existing commitment. So thank you. When I can attend, I certainly will, like every other municipal event that happens in this township, Councilwoman. And on to Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you. I would like to start by acknowledging that we recently had the BMAC Family Night. And it was moved from its typical Thursday night to a Tuesday night to accommodate some of the Board of Ed's family planning and DEI programming that they had in the community. I hope everybody enjoyed the evening out with their families and or dinner time conversations. I do think it is a worthwhile initiative. And I do think that more needs to be done to make sure that the family night process is actually observed. I know that there were different meetings and events that did take place on that Tuesday night. And I really hope that that can be avoided going forward. It is a really good opportunity for quality time with your family. I too read at Forest Avenue School for Read Across America Week. I was able to read a book to the 4th grade classes, Mrs. Bazade and Miss King at Forest Avenue School. We read the book Miss Paul and the President, all about the cause for women's suffrage in the United States. I thought that was a particularly relevant book given the children's focus on New Jersey history. And actually one of the girls in the class had recently done a project on Alice Paul. And it's also, as we know, Women's History Month. I want to congratulate the councilwoman for being nominated and participating in the Women of Impact panel. I personally found it to be very moving. And I was very impressed to see the female leadership on display and like the great resources that we have in this community for raising up women and girls. With that in mind, and given the numerous accolades for Boy Scouts this evening, I do just want to remind everybody that this is actually Girl Scout Week. And tomorrow is the 112th birthday of the Girl Scouting movement in the United States of America. In prior years, our township had honored the Girl Scouts of Verona with proclamations. We have actually over 450 girls in the Girl Scouting program between Verona and Cedar Grove, and the vast majority of those are in Verona, so well over 200 girls in the township of Verona are actively participating in the Girl Scouting program. I think it's an incredibly important female leadership program, and there's a lot of community service that goes into it. So when we do talk about Eagle projects, I think it's also important to give equal time to silver and gold award projects that the girls work on and really recognize the female leadership in the community. And hopefully the girls will be back for a future year for a proclamation. I also want to acknowledge the State of the County meeting because I too was in attendance. As was stated earlier, all of us were there. I was particularly moved by the discussion of recreation investment that the county has spent a tremendous amount of its time and energy focusing on recreation assets. Not only is the focus, not only is there going to be investment in our own Verona Park with the pickleball courts, which is something that our community has desperately wanted. There's been a lot of resident feedback about pickleball courts over the years, so I'm very grateful to the county investing in that. But it was also really meaningful for me to hear, as the liaison to the rec committee, the importance of investment in your recreational facilities and assets in the community, recognizing that not all wants and needs really fall to being like recreation falling toward the want side. Sometimes recreation truly is a need and an incredibly valuable investment for the community. That being said, the rec committee is meeting next week, and we will be discussing a number of projects. There is a very loaded agenda because the last two meetings were canceled due to snow. Tomorrow I will be attending an EV charging seminar with the State Bar Association, of which I am a longtime member and a consultant for the Public Utility Law section. And with that in mind, I do just want to remind all residents that the winter termination program is concluding this Friday. So if you have any need for utility assistance, I urge you to get that assistance now. The winter termination program limits the time period in which your utility provider can perform shutoffs, but after that time period, they can discontinue service, and they will do so if you do not seek assistance. So please avail yourself of those resources. And thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to the hearing, adoption, or amendment of ordinances. Madam Clerk, the next item on the agenda is an ordinance on second reading, which includes the title of ordinance G into the record.
Repealing 55 stormwater management, you go to the township and replacing with a new Article 25 stormwater management controls and requirements within Chapter 1 of the zoning code of the township.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would somebody move the ordinance?
So moved.
The motion is made.
Before it's moved, can I just ask, the planning board had written it's a letter about a change on page 5. That change made, it was just a simple addition.
This is repealing the existing ordinance.
Oh, okay.
I know it's a repeat.
I'm sorry.
Then we'll get to it.
Yes, it's replace. Right. So the motion was made by Councilman McGrath. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Now it's time for the public hearing on ordinance 2024-04. Madam Clerk.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on just this item only, please raise your virtual hand if by raising the raise hand button on your monitor. If you're dialing by turn, you'll have 4 minutes to address the council and just this item only. Please be advised. You provide your street address. Meeting will be put on the YouTube channel and it will not be redacted for. Speak has been heard. The council may address your comments and or questions. It's open.
No public comment. I'm going to close public comments. Councilman Roman.
Yes, I'll mention, this actually, the title of the ordinance, this is actually a repeal and replace, so this is a discussion of the replacement text for this as well as the repeal. I agree with the council, with the deputy mayor's comments about that Yeah, that one addition. There was also one thing that came up during the planning board hearing that didn't make it into the memo that I did want to bring up. The way that this ordinance is drafted, there is a requirement that a minor development, which is something as simple as like a 20 by 20-foot patio that does have stormwater mitigation measures, requires the homeowner then to restrict by conservation easement or deed restriction or other acceptable legal measures that mitigation area. And I had expressed a concern during the planning board meeting that, in my opinion, that's sort of unduly burdensome to a homeowner to encumber their title essentially with a deed restriction for, you know, and they would take the patio out, for example, it didn't require the mitigation in the future. And I'm curious as to, you know, to what extent do we want for a minor development? You know, I agree that there should be the mitigation measures, but to what extent do we want to require administrative measures on top of that? That was something we discussed at the planning board, and some of the consensus on the planning board was, yes, that is unduly burdensome for a minor development. And I didn't know, you know, I wanted to bring that up before the council because that didn't make it into the memo.
Just Kevin worked with.
Okay, let me start.
That there is flexibility in that, in the manner in which the ordinance is drafted, that it provides for other alternative legal measures, which could be an administrative check within the zoning department. Discussion be some. They're not necessarily restriction or other measures really see. Discussion.
Yeah, that did come up as to whether or not that, you know, leaving that within the administration. I'd ask our attorney, you know, as to an opinion as to if, you know, if we didn't feel like that was choice number one, like somebody goes and puts patio in and has stormwater mitigation, and we'd rather the township say, okay, well, you just have to register this with us, or you have to, you know, agree to put this in place. You know, but the power for the township to enforce a deed restriction is in here. You know, which direction do we go with? You know, do you have any thoughts on?
I prefer, which I think is what you're saying, a one or the other. I don't necessarily like the flexibility where you're sure whether there should be or should not be a deed restriction. So if you don't want the deed restriction, I would advise you to take it out. How do we have clear guidance on who has to have a deed restriction, who doesn't?
Yes.
So my question is, you're talking about something smaller, you mentioned 200 square foot, but in here it says. In the minor development section that I asked about if we added the line. Any development, planning board asked to add other than major development. That results in, it says 400 or more square foot of new impervious surface. So if someone's doing a smaller patio, then. It seems like they're not subject to it.
Yeah, Spawn? Yes, I'm looking at 150-25.7 stormwater management requirements for minor development. Stormwater runoff requirements applicable to minor developments are as follows. And then under that list, number 7 under that list says the stormwater management future development by conservation easement, deed restriction, or other acceptable legal measures. Now, I'm in favor of some sort of means by which someone can't, you know, build the mitigation measure and then just go rip it out after they get their final approval. So there needs to be something there. I just, again, whether if you record this on as an easement and then you sell the property and the next person takes out the patio, then how do they get rid of that deed restriction, for example? That's really where the direction I'm looking at this.
I tend to agree, and I agree with the township attorney that the flexibility is a problem because we treat different applications differently. So somebody has to do an easement here and somebody can do something administratively over here, that enters us into major problems as well. So I think that for the small developments, we should have a very clearly stipulated way of handling this. Councilman?
I'm sorry, can you, Councilman Roman, just go back? What exactly do you want to change?
150-25.7 A7. Page 23, bottom of page 23.
Okay, so you're saying deed restriction,
Yeah, because again, the net effect of this, if you build a 20 by 20 foot, 400 square foot patio, you'll trigger the requirement of a mitigation. Which I agree, if you build, 400 square feet of hardscape, you might need it. But the question is, do we want someone to have to go and record this? That's just, I think for us to discuss.
That. Read. Feature shall. Moves that bird. Deed restriction.
Mr. Top determined. I don't love it because it's still not specific in what it's requiring.
I'm just, I'm fighting with myself on what you need in there, because you're looking to protect something for a long period of time. And a deed restriction would certainly do that, but I understand the councilman's point. That is pretty onerous if I'm just gonna put in a patio that the next person might rip up. A lot of people do put patios on the ground, and the next owner does rip them up sometimes and makes a nice, a grass backyard. So that deed restriction's dead.
And if I may also, the point was made that the chance of the township doing a title search during the course of a building permit application is relatively low. And, actually the township discovering this restriction by means of it being recorded on a title is.
I think maybe I'd have to speak to the building department, so I don't know enough at our building department records, but if you did a recorded restriction within our records on the house.
Right. We've spoken to that way, it's an internal.
Yeah.
On internal property, doing that.
Something like that. I'm just not sure how that whole process works. If the pretty card will work, or there's another method, or something like Tom would say, no, we can't do that for whatever reason, we don't follow along.
Council.
I would say basically the mitigation measure shall be, shall be registered with the township's engineering office or building office, and shall remain in place, shall remain undisturbed so long as the construction requiring its installation exists, or something along those lines. You can clean my language.
I could live with something.
We'll work with the building department to get the language, but we certainly know the idea.
So at this point, do you have a motion to table this then? Because we can't adopt somebody's.
Well, this is first reading, as long as you have, this is, oh, I'm sorry, this is second.
Adoption, so
I apologize.
table it and
You would need to
adopt it
table.
in future meetings.
Mayor,
Not a conscious point of order.
you wanted to.
So applying. On this final. That.
I would agree with that, Marilyn, because it does have what I'll call the flexibility that was pointed out earlier. Other acceptable legal measures, the administration will interpret that to mean you have to register with the building office as we're discussing. And once we get that process in place, you'll see probably for first reading of the next agenda, an amendment to amend this. So we can adopt now and just, we'll read it twice an amendment.
I'm fine with that process.
Okay. Any further discussion, council?
well, I just want to follow up on the deputy mayor's comment. So what specific, can you just point us specifically on what the recommendation was to change?
On the planning board, it's on page 5. Under minor definition there of minor development. We have any development that results in, planning board suggested that we add. Any development other than a major development, just to make sure. Specific as to which development.
And may
Oh, the minor development is,
That's
That's-
minimus, right?
that's the minimus clarifying language. We can put that in there.
and there was some concern that basically it could be twisted into some sort of a loophole where somebody could say, okay, well, I have to do this, but I'm complying with the minor development standards, even though this is a major development, or the other way around. So it just was not sufficiently specific.
Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I would suggest, we did get a letter a very brief letter from the planning board. I would just make a process improvement suggestion that really if things are discussed at the planning board level, they really need to memorialize them and send them to us in advance. This was a great conversation, but it was not contained in the very short memo that we got, and it would be better for us to really like absorb some of these things before we get to the dais. So that's just a process improvement suggestion, Mayor, that I'm making. Thank you.
Someone? Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Before, are we making an amendment to change the, to adopt the wording in the planning board attorney's memo?
Yes, on page 5.
That makes sense. So we've, let's. Who made the motion on this?
Yeah, that,
Who made the motion originally?
I did.
Would you care to amend your motion to reflect it? Your original motion to reflect the clarification.
Well, I think didn't we just say it was de minimis? So do we have?
It is a minute, so you don't have to do it again. He's just asking the council to make sure everyone's
Okay.
happy with the
I
language.
amend my motion.
To reflect that, and who seconded the original motion? Deputy Mayor, will you second that?
yes,
Okay. All right, so we have the motion to adopt this as amended with that textual change. And then the other one brought up by Councilman Roman will be addressed in a future ordinance. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman. Yes. Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Rome,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
yes,
Mayor Tambora,
Yes.
Mayor G passes a vote 5-0. Followed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on the agenda is an ordinance number 2024-5. On second reading, Madam Clerk, read the title of this ordinance into the record.
455 stormwater management of the Code of the Town. Article 1 in Chapter 455 of stormwater quality of the Code of the Township.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will somebody please move the ordinance? So moved. Motion is made by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second is made by Councilman Roman. This point, I'll open for public comments on this item. We have not seen any change in the public participating, so we will need the statement reread. Public comment is open. Seeing no public comment, I'm going to close public comment at this time. Is there any council discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman. Yes. Councilwoman,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
yes,
Mayor Tambora,
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance 2024-05 passes 5-0 and it will be published according to law.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 2024-06. On second reading, Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
An ordinance 65-1 Schedule of Fees of the Township Code.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will somebody move the ordinance, please?
So moved.
Motion's made by Councilman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is made by Councilman Roman. This time I'll open for public comment on ordinance number 2024-06 only. Same public comment statement applies. Seeing no public comments, is there any council discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Rome,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
yes,
Mayor Tambora.
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance 2020. 5-0, it will be.
Moving on to ordinance number 2024-07 on second reading. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of 2024-07 to the record?
An ordinance to amend traffic, amend Article 14. Parking, Section 1-68. There are permit parking zones designated, Chapter A 565-1, Schedule of Fees of the Code of the Township of Verona. Increase the metered parking rate to 25 cents for 20 minutes. And Saturday to the day's parking meter payments are required.
Madam Clerk, would someone move the ordinance, please?
So moved.
Motion's made by Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's made by Councilman McGrath. At this time, I'll open for public comment On this ordinance only, the same public comment statement applies. Seeing no public comment, I close public comment on this item. Is there any council discussion? Councilman McGrath.
Thank you. I just want to thank the administration for leading this process and putting together a very detailed and thorough analysis. I am looking forward to the new parking kiosks being installed. And I'm looking forward to more reviews of our fees. This is one of many, many, many examples where we are undercharging. And we really need to increase our revenue. And these small fee increases are one way to do it. I want to thank the mayor for bringing Saturday into the conversation for these fee increases. I think to do it all at once was a strategic move on our part, and also for bringing in the business community before this was introduced. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I just want to point out what I did at the last meeting when we introduced this, and just make sure that after this is done, we go back and review the streets that are listed on here and revise this ordinance. But thank you very much to everybody who did work on this.
Thank you. I just want to address I got a question about adding the Saturday. We meter parking for two reasons. The first, as Councilman McGrath pointed out, is to raise revenue. And also to pay for improvements to our parking lots, to pay for various other things so that we can offer public parking. Most of what we collect goes right back into the improvement of these facilities, to buying parking meters. But the second very important piece of metering parking is to limit the amount of time that people park in one of our very scarce parking spaces in the downtown. And that's why I suggested adding Saturdays. This is common in the area. But we do have a busy civic center and a busy downtown business district on Saturdays. And metering will ensure that our enforcement officers and our police department can ascertain who has been working beyond their welcome at that point, and to free those spaces up. So I hope that serves a dual purpose, and I think that the Chamber of Commerce was supportive of an increase, knowing that could benefit them as well, and knowing that the parking lots will be better maintained and they'll be able to take care of. But I do appreciate their support on that as well. And at this point, we'll call the roll.
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Ro-
Yes.
Deputy Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor Tim Borough.
Yes.
There, ordinance 0750, and we'll
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 2024-08. On second reading, Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
an ordinance to amend 5-1 sewer rates.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would somebody please move the ordinance?
So moved.
The motion is made by Councilwoman Holland. Is there a second? The second is made by the Deputy Mayor. This time I will open public comment on this item only. The same public comment statement applies. Being no public comment, I will close public comment. I would like to address this quickly. This reflects a pretty significant increase both in our water and our sewer rates. And it is going to be one that hurts for a little while, for sure. However, at the same time, we face in this township infrastructure that needs repair. We have been faced with regulatory changes that have been out of our control as far as PFOA, PFAS. Fortunately, on some of those projects, we will be getting principal forgiveness loans, which is good, which decreases the amount. And my hope is that the surcharges for the PFOA, PFAS will drop off of this when we see parts of them, at least, because the projects have actually come in less. For the first time ever in government, we had a project come in less than we anticipated Mr. Diarco is so surprised in his 55 years as municipal administrator that this happened, that he is ecstatic, as you can tell. So I do want to point that I understand for folks that are going to be paying more for this, but it is a necessary increase. It will not be popular, but in this circumstance and from this chair, we really have very little choice. I encourage everybody, when you have an opportunity, to read the entire New Gen Strategies report. It was very informative and extraordinarily well done, and I am basing my vote on its validity. The other nice thing that I think we need to recognize is that we are making one ordinance at this point. If for some reason that we see the report was not as accurate or conditions have changed, we can alter our structure. If our fund balance gets too high, we're running very high surpluses, you want some amount of fund balance for the utility. But if we're running very, very high in fund balance, we can potentially look at these things again with the help of a consultant to see the long-term effect. And that is my comment. I'm going to call on the council first.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank the administration for the thoughtful, deliberative process that went into preparing this ordinance. We had previously, or the council had previously, over my objection, voted for very large fee increases without the support of an asset management plan, which is really a strategic document that helps a utility and guides its approach to its infrastructure and its quality of service. And we had never done a rate study before. So it was tremendously helpful to have those documents prepared prior to seeing this ordinance. I do agree with the mayor that this is a shocking increase, and I think that it will be stunning to a number of residents. And for that, I am very sorry. But I do also want to comment on the fact that this is the cost of inaction. Because while water rates remain stagnant for many, many years, our infrastructure was deteriorating and there wasn't new investment in that infrastructure. Earlier this evening, we heard about one of the bases for declaring the entire stretch of Bloomfield Avenue as an area in need of rehabilitation is the poor state of our water and sewer infrastructure. This was the topic that I ran on 3.5 years ago when I presented myself to the residents of the Township of Verona as a utility professional concerned about the state of our aging infrastructure in this community. We simply were not investing in our pipes and in our services. And as a result, we were constantly plagued with water quality notices telling us that there was some new contaminant in our wells. We were given, the Township of Verona was given notice that the PFOA standard was coming online, but the lack of action until after we had violated that standard is part of what drives the significant costs. If we had done some of this work earlier, it would have cost less money. But again, this is the cost of inaction. So we are coming online now. We are remediating our wells, and I really also want to applaud the administration for taking some of the feedback that I had given about going through the iBank to ensure that we did get those principal forgiveness loans so that we did get some of the additional grant funding and that you have leveraged all the grant funding that you can to really make these projects come in cheaper. But it's still not going to be so cheap that this isn't going to be a stunning increase for our residents. That is very disappointing, but this is also right-sizing our utility rates for the present and also establishing a cadence going forward where we will not have these shocking rate increases year after year after year, because we now have a structure, we have an asset management plan, and there should be a strategy so long as the administration maintains it going forward so that this won't continue to happen. And I finally just want to conclude with, unlike your property taxes, right? You're not really able to constrict the size of your house or the size of your property when property taxes increase. You can help to manage your water usage. So I do really want to encourage residents to consider conservation measures, especially as these rates are coming into effect, to help mitigate some of the shock of this increase. You can manage your water usage. We've had an incredibly wet winter. I do think that we don't probably need to be watering our lawns as much this year as maybe folks had in prior years. I really consider those conservation measures as a way of mitigating the rate increase impact. So thank you for the opportunity to comment, but that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Councilman Holman.
Thank you. And I'll sort of disagree with the characterization that we haven't been investing in our utilities here. We've rehabbed every water tank in the town. At the wastewater treatment plant, we replaced the trickling filters. We repaired the emergency generator. We replaced the mechanical bar screen rack. We are a small town. And we're a small town that is in the business of operating public utilities, and we operate sort of within our limits of what our budgets are and what our project management capabilities are. Do I wish that we would do more? Yes. I mean, I look at these systems and I know that they need maintenance, but I'm not going to be so sharply critical of the township. I do think that we are doing what we can for a township of our size. I mean, I'd rather see us in a regional utility. I think it's very challenging from the structure of a New Jersey government for a township of this size to be operating water and sewer utilities on its own, essentially. And that's some of the challenges that we face. But we do invest a lot of money in these utilities. I am willing to support this because of the amount of data that has gone behind it and the in-depth report that's produced. I agree that this is going to be a very large shock to a lot of our residents. Am I happy about it? No, not the slightest. We try and run every service that we can in this town at the lowest reasonable cost possible to try and keep the expenses down for our town because we're not a for-profit utility. But in this case, it's been demonstrated quite clearly that we do need these revenues here. So I'm going to support it for that. The wastewater treatment plant is my largest concern. I mean, that we have done some work on there, but I do feel like we sort of only scratched the surface. And I really think that that's, once we get out from underneath the PFAS remediation of the wells, that's going to be our next big challenge. And I really do hope that this gives us some of the resources to address that plant, because you can go there and you can just see that the infrastructure there is rusting to pieces. We get to it as best we can, but that plant does need investment. So hopefully this gives us the ability to do it.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilwoman Beth,
Yes.
Councilman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tambora,
Yes.
Mayor with ordinance 2024. Be published according to law.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next ordinance on the agenda is 2024-09. On second reading, would you please read the title of that ordinance?
An ordinance to amend chapter B of the
Madam Clerk, will somebody please move the ordinance?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is made by Councilman Roman. This time will open for public comment on this ordinance only. Seeing public comment statement. Seeing no public comment, I will close public comment. Any council discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilman Hopps,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Tambora.
Yes.
Mayor ordinance 09 passes 5-0 and it'll be
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on second reading is ordinance 2024-10. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
an ordinance 65.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will somebody move the ordinance, please? So, motion is made by Councilman Roman. Is there a second? I'll second it. At this time, I will open for public comment on ordinance 2024-10. Say public comment statement applies. If no public comment, I will close public comment. I would like to start the discussion off on this item. I first want to say I think that there is definite room for improvement in our process as far as deciding these fees. And I think having some economic data to support these things would be very helpful as far as really figuring out what our maximization point is, and what our marginal revenues will cost. I think that this is one of those items that it's always difficult to figure out where the sweet spot is. I did just want to note that Cedar Grove's proposed or their adopted pool fees came out. Their family pool fee membership is $609 versus our $605. Their individual is $435 to $397. Our couple or parent-child is a little higher. Theirs is $519, ours is $547. Their what they call babysitter membership is $160 to our caregiver membership $150. Their senior membership is $208 to our $195. The thing to note about the Cedar Grove pool is that it is not nearly as nice as a facility as ours. They do not have the offerings that we have. They don't have offerings. It is one basically large pool. I think people there have only been there once for an industrial, but so I think that for what we're providing, the high quality of our facility and into it, we're still very competitively priced. So we're charging for a Mercedes what another dealership is charging for a Chevy, and I think that is important to note. The other item I would like to note is that I did ask a discussion or first reading for any council members who plan on taking a full membership this year to disclose which level of membership that they would be taking. In the same spirit as Councilman McGrath asked anybody to identify any property that they own in order to be fully transparent to the public. So I will renew that request since it was not the last one around. So if every council member would care to share if they're planning on taking a full membership or not. I will start out that I am not taking a full membership. I am entitled to a free membership as a member of the rescue squad. I do not even take the free membership. But I will share that. Any other discussion?
Yes, well, as I stated, Mayor, at the last meeting, I am a proud pool member, family membership for the last 13 years. I really love going to the pool and I know the utility intimately. And I even took up swimming as exercise. So I really love this pool and this asset, and I am very excited to join again. I have the following comments, for my peers and the administration, but of course directed to the mayor. I too agree that we do need a more robust rate setting process next year. I thank the administration for already thinking through what that might look like. Last year, we asked that this timeline be brought forward so that we weren't up against tight deadlines, but yet here we are again. I was disappointed that our new interim director was not brought in to talk about the pool with us, with the CFO. I understand this was a very tough season with illness, and that may have been the reason, but we really need the head of this facility in lockstep with our CFO in all conversations, because I think there was some confusion by not having that individual in the room. As part of that, we have received very pointed feedback from the public, both in the survey and now through members of the public that wrote to us as we were talking about the pools, about the cleanliness of the bathrooms. That absolutely needs to be addressed. In addition, the Recreation Advisory Committee, which I'm so excited is actually really gaining some steam here. They made some great revenue recommendations, as I have also made some to the administration. So in lockstep with this, we really need to think outside the box on other revenue generating ideas for the pool this season. And I know they're underway with the administration. At our last meeting, there was some rate changing on the dais by members of the governing body. It was passed over my objection. I am really concerned when we overrule the administration and make adjustments. It is my understanding of the senior citizen pool membership that they could have afforded an extra $7. And we really should be focusing on that family rate. Though, as mayor, as you've already pointed out, Cedar Grove did release their rates, and we do have a much superior pool. But as we've already discussed publicly, this is step one of 2 years of what we anticipate to be significant increases. I will support these pool fee increases tonight. We have to, basically because of the revenue situation that we are in, but I am really looking forward to more comprehensive conversations on this pool utility in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hall.
Thank you. As I previously said in conversations regarding this ordinance, I have come to be very uncomfortable with the pool rate setting process. So I too did see the article where Cedar Grove did recently pass their rates. And I think that maybe there is some comfort there that there is comparability, and perhaps there's an argument for affordability for the Verona pool because it is such a valuable asset and it does offer so many amenities. But I remain uncomfortable with this fee setting process because it doesn't have the support of data, because a lot of it is temperature taking and guesstimating here on the dais rather than being informed by a strategic analysis of a forward-looking plan for how the pool will be managed. Right now, it appears that, it's a sizable property that's left fallow most of the year, and that we are trying to generate revenue within 2 months to support that property. And perhaps there's opportunities throughout the year that can be utilized to support the pool utility. Perhaps there are more strategic opportunities in terms of recreation and the assets that are there. However, and while some of those were touched upon by the, ambitious rec committee subcommittee, they haven't really been fully explored, nor are they really part of this revenue generation and discussion that we've been having over the last several weeks. As a result, all of the revenue concerns get concentrated into the membership fees, and it does just keep driving that cost up and up and up for families. And I am concerned about the affordability piece, as we are going to be welcoming more low and moderate income residents into our community, about whether or not we're pricing people out of that pool, or we're setting up a situation where the pool will be scaled back in future years. And that's really kind of a disappointing conclusion also for the residents of the Township of Verona. So what I think is really important is that we take a more strategic focus. I do appreciate that the administration has heard my prior comments on this and that you are moving forward. So perhaps next year I will be in a more comfortable position. But as of right now, I am not willing to support these fee increases. I do not think that they, are adequately justified, nor is there really kind of any indication of a strategic plan going forward for the pool, so that we don't keep finding ourselves in rate shocking our residents year after year after year. Because there was a sizable increase last year, and the quality of service apparently has not kept up with that cost. So I would really like to see that addressed as well. And I think Councilwoman McGrath made a valuable point about the cleanliness of the facilities. We have heard that from various residents. And it was a point that I did ask during the budget presentations. But again, this evening, I'm not comfortable with the rate setting process that we have before us. And so I am not supportive of this ordinance.
Councilman Rowe.
Thank you. First off, in response to the mayor's request for disclosure, I generally do not get a pool membership. I've considered getting an individual or Twilight membership, but I'd only be able to use it on a weekend, and it magically seems to rain most weekends, so I have not been doing that. In regards to the rate setting process and the overall rate structure of the pool, this is an inexact science. I've always said that our goal here is, our success is profit maximization, not so much from the revenue point of view, but because it means that the largest number of people within the community are able to use the pool and we're able to operate at the standards that we. So we do tweak the rates up and down. There is the concept of dynamic pricing in attractions and other things that have capacity restrictions. We're just doing this on a much slower scale. We're not doing it on a daily basis. We're doing it on a yearly basis, where we evaluate the results of operations and then we make adjustments. We've seen, situations where we feel like pricing adjustments may or may not deliver us more revenue, and that's always a concern. I would like to see a better data-driven approach and some economic theory here as to how we try and profit maximize and make sure that the pool is accessible to as many people as possible while maintaining the maintenance standards and paying for its capital debt. So I would welcome seeing something more in depth next year and earlier in the year. But again, I recognize our responsibility to operate this utility for this coming year. We have to pass pool rates that will allow us to operate the pool. This is what we have here. I think the adjustments we made were reasonable in light of our own, personal thoughts on what might help make this pool most accessible to each category of membership. And I'm going to support this as it's in front of us.
Deputy Mayor.
Sure. I would first like to point out that I believe hopefully moving forward, towards the end of the season, maybe late August or even right after the pool closes, is probably the best time we should put a survey out and survey all the people that use the pool. I don't know how soon after we did it last year, but I just think everything's fresh in their minds. We just got an email today about the cleanliness of the pool, so it would be nice if we had them earlier. And then we can reach out to these people and have discussions with them. I just think that would help us and maybe somehow get a feel for raising fees the next year, where we can do it, where we can't, and see what group of people are happy or unhappy. I think when it comes to this fee schedule, I do agree that maybe there's a better process and better information we can get. I think moving forward, we make sure that we have data on people that come in and out. I think I've spoke with the director of recreation about focusing on that, where he says they do a great job, but obviously we get emails saying the opposite. But when it comes to this fee schedule that we created for this year, it's, to me, driven by spending. We basically overspent. We did the splash pad and we did the baby pool at the same time. We probably should have split those projects. And I know in the long run they cost more, but we just spent a lot of money all at once and now we have to pay for it. And that's why these fees are going up. If we split them, we could have spread it out. It's kind of, when we talk about our infrastructure and we don't we don't see the pipes underground. We go back a couple years, 10, 12 years, we spent, I don't even think there's a final number on what we spent on Liberty and Freedom Fields. To build them, I think it was 10 million. Doesn't count what we spent on purchasing the property up there. I think that was the same amount. So, those were the things. It's driven by the public. This is what they wanted. That's money we could have spent on a new police station at the time, or a new rescue squad building, or fire station. But the council at that time chose to do 2 new fields. So it's that's a lot of times that's where it goes, and that's where money goes, because they see the shiny new car and they want to buy it. So I think that's exactly what happened here, and that's why these fees are going up, because the entire township can't be paying for this pool. It's a separate utility, and that's the way it should be funded. And it hasn't been that way. So I think moving forward, we adjust ourselves and make sure that we keep it focused on that utility. If things work out and fees can go down next year, great. I have a question for the administration. What happens here if this doesn't pass?
You don't have any time. Your pool needs to open, you need to start registrations and fees, and you're literally at a time on your fees. I'm not sure if the fire ordinance carries, and it does, so you'll be working on fees that are not sufficient to carry your pool.
So the utility could close if we as a council say, or a majority say, the town's not funding it, it has to be self-sufficient.
Actually, Mayor, if I may.
Nice.
Actually, your decision would be the pool is going to close. What will end up happening is that you'll be in a deficit. The deficit transfers to your operating budget, and the overall taxpayers get that issue. And if you're running out of money in the local budget, which was pretty efficiently run, if I can say, you will be looking at an emergency that'll impact on the 2025 budget. So I really would strongly recommend that you address this. And there, if I can just cover a few more items for you.
Please.
Unfortunately, the superintendent was sick, and that's why he wasn't at the budget meeting here, but he was at the budget meetings with myself, my team, the CFO, as we were putting the budget together. I did hear your concerns about data and more efficient data as we did with water. We are contracting with a firm as soon as we get the proposal in to do that study on the pool utility. That should answer your question. It will be done now, not after the pool closes. I really need to have it in place in a relatively short amount of time for you to start looking at and digesting where this pool is going. I did have meetings with the superintendent and staff relative to the concerns of the residents at the pool and the plans that are being put in place for monitoring the registrations of the people coming to the pool based on concerns that the public had about people that were getting into the pool that shouldn't have been in the pool. Also the concerns about the bathrooms and the cleanliness of the grounds, that is being addressed by the superintendent with all the staff going on. And my direction to the superintendent was literally staff that did not perform their jobs. They need to be issued one warning and then terminated if necessary. Everybody has a job to do. Everyone must do their job. So Dave is obviously your new superintendent. He's putting a number of pieces in place. And as Councilwoman Holland said, the next meeting is an extensive agenda that is being driven by Dave and meetings I've had with your superintendent to put that part of your organization in place. So those concerns are being addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Yarko, Deputy Mayor.
So the reason I posed that question is because I am a little uncomfortable with this. Councilwoman mentioned that the senior raise in this is $7, or the difference is $7 and they can afford it. I different opinion. It's actually a $22 raise per senior, because last year they were only paying $175. So even at $195, I'm not real comfortable with it. So I'm worried about this and worried about the pool because it's a very good asset for the township.
Thank you, that's all I have. And I'll close the conversation with just a couple points. I'll let you go, Stephen. I think there are a few items. First, we hear comments about the pool being clean or not at this stage in the process. I think that is several months too late, like 9 months too late. So my recommendation to any members of the public who are pool members who have a concern, go to the pool managers. There's always a manager on duty. Anytime the pool is open, there's a manager on duty. I go there several times a year to inspect and walk around with the managers. I talk to residents, people are using the pool. Those concerns were brought to me as I'm walking around. I even wear my Township Verona shirt, the whole thing, to be visible. I brought Mr. Diarco there with me on one of these little tours. But I would absolutely recommend going to the managers. Or all of our pool managers are phenomenal people. So go to them. If the pool manager is not responsive to your concern, you go to the director of community services. If the director of community services is not responsive to your concern, call Mr. O'Sullivan and Mr. Diarco. That is how you're going to get your concerns about cleanliness dealt with when they happen. Telling the council later is all we're going to be doing is saying we will be concerned. I have no evidence. I didn't see any problems when I was there. Of course, I obviously didn't enter the women's room. But really, we're going to pass it back to Mr. Diarco, who's going to pass it back to the superintendent of recreation, who's going to pass it back to the pool managers. So talk to the people when you see them. I think that's important. Second comment is, I think we should have a mid-season survey or some mid-season gathering just to get some ideas of what's going on. Maybe not about fees, but I'd like to know, like, how many guests have you brought in? What are you feeling about that? How is cleanliness? Like, not something huge. I think the pool survey that we sent out was actually maybe too long and people got survey fatigue. So we may not have gotten as many responses as we probably would like. But I would absolutely suggest a brief, how are we doing type survey. The my third piece is, and I agree, I take the deputy mayor's point very well. If we don't do anything, our existing pool fees stay. Well, I've expressed my concerns about how the pool fees were derived. Have to have new fees so we can offer the pool as utility. There was a comment that I would also like to address where there was concern about not agreeing with the administration on the recommendations. Our administration does exactly that, is they make recommendations to the council, and our township manager has said multiple times that it's really up to us in the end. Our job as elected officials is, number one, to hire the best possible manager that we can get. And of course, we have that in Mr. Diarco. And the second is to be that protector of our residents before we legislate, pass legislation. So that's exactly what you're doing. In fact, that's really our job here, is to make sure that any fees come before a fair, to make sure that our fees are not disproportionately affecting our senior citizens, to make sure that everybody is represented in the process. So I think perhaps my theory of representation is different. But I honestly, based on my extensive knowledge and understanding of representation, political science, and teaching it, I think I'm pretty well in line with what the standards of representation are. And I give our administration credit for presenting us recommendations that are just that, in recommendations. And not only that, but responding to and enacting the policy when we adopt it in a meaningful manner. So thank you all for that. Councilman Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to just put a couple things on the record. So there is a pool survey that is sent out at the end of the pool season fairly quickly, every single year. We actually got hundreds of verbatim comments. And hundreds of residents filled it out. And I believe we got a copy of those results in October. That pool survey was actually started as my initiative when I was elected. I felt it was really important to encompass feedback. And so that is an important part of our process. I just wanted to make sure we clarify that. And I also just want to correct the record, as I see it, on the rate increases and how they tie to increased expenses. So our budget went up $140,000 from 2023 budget to 2024 budget as presented by our CFO. So $40,000 of that 140 was due to increased debt service due to the addition of the splash pad and the renovation of the baby pool, which made it ADA accessible. An additional $40,000 is due to increased salaries, largely because of increasing minimum wage. $30,000 of that increase is due to the skyrocketing cost of chemicals for that pool. And the final $30,000 were miscellaneous expenses, which included us making sure that some of the costs of the pool that were actually in our general fund were being appropriately pulled out into the pool utility. So yes, we did do a very expensive project. Yes, it did result in additional $40,000 of cost, but the total 140, it's only a proportion of the total cost of $140,000 that are increasing. So I just want to put that on the record because there are some broad themes: chemicals, wages, debt service, getting the pool utility to be an all-encompassing and financial entity. Finally, I just want to reiterate, of course, it's the job of the governing body to take the administration's recommendations and put our own spin on it. But I do think it is a responsibility of the council to try to incorporate our comments as soon as possible. And especially when it comes to rates and rates introduction, to avoid making changes on the day as well. We are allowed to do so upon introduction. I think that's where there was a little bit of a surprise. But thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing me to have a second speaking time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland?
No.
Councilwoman Grant?
Yes.
Councilman Roman? Deputy Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Campbell?
Yes.
Mayor 2020. I'm sorry, 2024-10 passes 7, and it will be published according to law.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to relinquish the chair and recuse myself from discussion on ordinance number 2024-11, as I am a member of the Verona Rescue Squad, though I do not take the complimentary membership. The deputy mayor has the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And now the next item on the agenda, second reading is ordinance number 2024-11. Madam Clerk, can you please read the title?
An ordinance, chapter 560 of the Code of the Township of Verona for volunteer rescue squad members.
Someone like to move this ordinance?
So moved.
Someone like to second? I will second it. Moved by Councilman Roman, seconded by myself. Okay, now is the time for a public hearing. Anyone from the audience or on Zoom, raise your hand. Seeing no one, we will close public participation. Any comments from council? Councilwoman?
I'll just reiterate my prior statements, as this is a new hearing on a separate ordinance, but also related to pool fees, that I have a general discomfort with the calculation of fees for the pool this season. I do think that some of the fees could be calculated on a more reasonable basis, utilizing data in a strategic plan approach. And so I will be objecting to this ordinance as well. For the same reason that I objected to ordinance 2024-10.
Anyone else on the council? We'll just make a quick comment. I've actually spoke with several members of the rescue squad on this, and the fire department. And something brought to my attention that one never thinks of. We're dealing with a utility where there's a lot of water and therefore a lot of accidents. And I know, speaking to some of those members of the rescue squad, that there's been accidents there while these members are present. And they're being present when something happens. The response time obviously is cut down. One of the people I spoke with, actually, he and his wife attended to somebody. He actually left his family, got in the ambulance, and took this person to the hospital in transportation. So there is a benefit to having these members there present during regular hours of the pool being open. So obviously another reason why I would gladly support this ordinance. So, and seeing no other comment, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilman Holland?
No.
Councilwoman McGrath?
Yes.
Councilman Roman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy?
Yes.
There, it's 2024-11 passes 3-1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll hand the floor back to the mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You're a natural. It's like you've done this before. All right. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 24-12 on second reading. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
Fixing the salaries and compensation of the paid officers. Under year.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will somebody move the ordinance?
So moved.
The motion is by Councilman Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. The second is by the Deputy Mayor. Any public comment? Now is the time for the public hearing on this ordinance. Same public comment statement applies. Seeing no public comment, is there any council discussion on these? Councilwoman Holland.
I would just say, I did, communicate previously with the township administration regarding the ranges of the salaries presented in this ordinance. I objected on introduction and I will be objecting here on second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I would just like to thank all of our municipal staff for their hard work, and I think the salary ranges as proposed by the manager are fair and a recognition of the work that our staff do. If only we could pay them more and make that work. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman,
No.
Councilwoman,
Yes.
Councilman Rome,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tambora,
Yes.
Mayor ordinance 2024-12 passes 4-1, will be published according to law.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2024-13. On second reading, would you please read the title of this ordinance?
An ordinance to Parks and Recreation.
Clerk, will somebody move the ordinance?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilman Collins. The second is by Councilman McGrath. This time I will open the public hearing on ordinance number 2024-13. Same public comment statement applies. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Any council discussion? Councilman Holland.
Yes, thank you. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous work that the rec committee has been putting in. These are very dedicated individuals, and the rec committee has existed for a long time, but the paradigm has certainly shifted. This ordinance is one example of that change in organization to the committee. They developed subcommittees for the first time. They came forward with written recommendations. And as we stated earlier, they do have a robust agenda coming up. So just really want to compliment those individuals and compliment the new chair of the rec committee and thank them for their service. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Hahn,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tambora,
Yes.
Mayor Orange. 13 passes 5.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to read myself from H1. The Deputy Mayor has the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda is ordinance on first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please read the title of the ordinance?
Or reserve for future improvements for the rescue squad special operations vehicle in the Township of Verona, New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will actually move this ordinance. Would anybody like to second it?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilman Roman. Any comment on this? Councilwoman McGrath?
Yes, I had sent a question to the administration on this over the weekend. I didn't get a response. I would like to know how this capital ordinance was, or why this capital ordinance was put on the agenda when we just went through a very lengthy process where we saw lots of capital requests. We have a lot of capital needs, a lot of safety issues. So why is this particular ordinance being fast tracked?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Mayor. Unfortunately, this was approved in 2023. I had believed it was in motion when that vehicle was acquired. It was when I first came here, I was advised it was acquired. It was in discussion in 22 and 3. It was approved to do a capital ordinance, and I literally missed it. It never moved forward. The funding was there. The CFO had a question relative to the equipment that was being donated that went into it. And some of the equipment was purchased already, and they were trying to hammer out the exact number through the emergency squad. And I completely lost sight of this project. So that's why it ends up now. Yeah, the vehicle is here. We retrieved it when it was donated. It's been in Public Works, and it was supposed to be moving forward. And it didn't until the question came up about where's that emergency vehicle. There was also a period of time when the rescue squad was discussing with the police department and the fire department a joint use of the vehicle, but it was more driven to the rescue squad, and the president of the rescue squad clarified that with both the other two agencies, that it would be solely their project or their vehicle. And that's the only answer that I have, very honestly. That's why it's coming up separately, because it was previously approved.
I think for my purposes, I don't have nearly enough background, and I also just have concerns with the process, especially since, there are individuals on the council who have stated on the record that they're members of the rescue squad. The mayor is also the deputy coordinator, OEM coordinator, and the fact that this is being pulled out and there was no background information for me, I have a lot of concerns, questions. So I would be open to considering this in the future as part of a larger package. And personally, I feel that if this is really of importance to the rescue squad, I will need, for me to feel comfortable going forward, a touch base directly from them, and we need to have some offline conversations. Thank you.
So I will add to manager's explanation. I have spoken to the president of the rescue squad and the captain about this. This has, as the manager stated, it's been ongoing. It's been sitting up in the public works for quite some time. It has to be known to the rest of the council. This vehicle also came with about $100,000 worth of equipment. That was one of the main reasons why they got it. They have for a couple of years now been using that equipment. If this was some of the reason for the moving this forward right away, is that if this is not finalized and used by the rescue squad or the town of Verona, then the vehicle will be asked to be returned, and the equipment that came with it would also have to be returned. When listening to the explanation, it's also a vehicle that they wish they had at a time like the Claridge fire at the beginning of July, when our EMS workers are out there in 100-degree weather and practically having heart attacks. It's a cooling center, it's a command center, it's a very valuable piece of equipment for the rescue squad and the fire department and the police department. So for $42,000 and $225, I think it's a minimal amount of money for a piece of equipment that would greatly benefit the township of Verona. So that's all I'll add to that. Any other Councilman Roman?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. I've had similar conversations with the rescue squad about the use of the vehicle, the equipment that was supplied with it, the need to put it into service or the risk of losing it. And also when this first came up, I believe this was actually a higher dollar amount. I think 70,000 roughly sticks in my head, but I think they were able to get the radio for the vehicle and some other parts of it in the interim. So I think the dollar amount on this might have actually gone down since the last time that we talked about it. But the Claridge incident made it obvious that a piece of equipment like this is fairly valuable to the town. These are extremely expensive assets to buy. If you have to have them built new, we would not be able to put one of these into service without the acquisition process that happened with this. And it's a relatively small investment on behalf of the township for the capabilities that it gives us in the event that we should need it in the future. So I'm in favor of allocating this amount for
it. Councilwoman Holland?
Thank you. While I appreciate that my gentleman colleagues have had the opportunity to have the discussion with the rescue squad leadership, I have not had any outreach from the rescue squad regarding this capital ordinance. I was also surprised that we were moving forward on capital projects because we did just conclude the budgeting process and there were a number of wish list items that were presented by all of the different department heads. This was one of the projects that I do recall the rescue squad mentioning, but again, number of other wish list items were also presented, including leaking roofs and other significant investments. I also just want to point out that we are out of our process. So it has been our established process as a body to discuss these things in new business before they're brought forward for introduction. So that did not happen here. That would have been a great opportunity for the rescue squad to speak to the entire body about this item. but also for the administration to present your larger capital plans to us. And that's really what my concern is. I don't disagree that maybe we could afford $42,000. But at the same time, I would like to understand that in the larger strategic context of what are we funding with capital? So I don't want to just look at this one project and go $42,000. This makes sense. It's over $100,000 worth of stuff, and our rescue squad does a tremendous job for us. This would have been a valuable asset. I completely agree with all of those statements, but just looking at it in that vacuum doesn't give me the bigger picture of what, what are the trade-offs and what are your other capital plans? What were the things that made the list and what were the ones that didn't when we had our directors come to us? Well, I mean, clearly this is making the list for you, but like, what were the ones that didn't? I would like to have that understanding, certainly before I voted on a second reading. I'm not opposed to moving forward this evening with introduction. However, in order to move past a second reading, I would really want to understand the broader scope of where this fits into our capital plans.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure, Mr. Yarko.
I completely understand your concerns and the unfortunate aspect of this is that it's a 2023 project that was approved and just got lost in the shuffle. And that's partly my fault. That was 22. I knew nothing about this vehicle being donated to the town, but was discussed in a meeting. And I said, okay, I'll go get it. Yeah, I didn't have the entire background on it either, but it was prior to me getting here. We did get it. We did get it with the equipment. And in 2023, it was supposed to be capitalized. I'm not sure how it got lost in the shuffle, as there were many stuff in New York and facing here. So I apologize for that delay, but it's not a 2024 capital item, it's a 2023 one.
President Hurst.
Great explanation.
Councilman Roman.
Thank you. I will agree with the manager that this was definitively supposed to be in 2023. So this has been discussed and, we are late on the project, but that doesn't mean, we should kill it. We see reason for this to go forward. And secondly, we did have a couple other capital items. Specifically, we had the in-car cameras for the police vehicles, and we had a couple other things that are out of the budget process that have already gone through this year. So to say that, we're out of process, but we do look at things as they come up with necessities. So I don't say that that's a blanket reason to shoot it down.
Any other comments? Seeing no other comments, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman,
No.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
There, number 2024-15, it passes a vote 3-1. Was published according to law. March.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I will turn the floor back over to the mayor.
Thank you. I may turn it back to you, Deputy Mayor. State President of the Rescue Squad came in and typically the given 8 to speak it. You'll back.
Should we go into public? Or speak on this one? It's first reading, so we don't typically.
Public comments.
You can call about comment.
All right, so I'll open up public comment. If anybody from the audience or on Zoom would like to make a comment, please raise your hand or step to the lectern, give me your name, not address, just township you live in. Any none? See one?
Name's Verona. Apologize.
That's fine.
Name and sound, sir.
Fred Tempesta, 99 Linwood, Verona. That's so shared. Just coming
Talk to him.
I
Just make sure.
I can trust everybody equally. It's all good. Just coming to speak on a special operations vehicle. I know there's some unclarity of like it coming up. This has been a can't kick down the road repetitively for a couple of years. And I've been constantly asking the council for the funding for it. And for one reason or another, it's been falling through the cracks, and it happens. So unfortunately, bureaucracy is bureaucracy. It is what it is. But the real big take home is the $100,000 of equipment we've got: misting fans, tents, fire rehab equipment. having a closed air conditioned command post when you're evacuating, a 12-story apartment building on a 90-something degree day, and you're all suffering medical issues because it's hot and it's impossible for the responders to focus and make decisions. We just, commandeered the senior bus, but it wasn't really efficient. Go over planning, logistics, operational periods, all the stuff that goes into a long-term event, because at some point, whenever you have an acute incident, you need to make the decision, are we going to close the incident, or are we going to go into operational shifts, which is we ended up deciding was we rotated out the day crew, brought in night crews. And trying to logistically coordinate that basically on a fold-up table in 95-degree weather was painful. So having air conditioned space where we could add rolling communication scribes, writing all the information down. I understand in Verona, we don't think of these big incidents, but we've had several of them over the last 20 years that I've been on the squad. And in years past, we used to use the old rescue truck because it had a command area set up for that. It wasn't great, but it got the job done. But we really don't have that ability. And honestly, all command posts aside, all HVAC aside, the biggest take home is it comes with hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that I've sold the council time and time again on multiple occasions, both individually and as a group. So the value to both the township, the responders, and the citizens is paramount. And there aren't many organizations that can tout our numbers. And because they're relatively fresh off the presses, we turfed less than 0.5% of our calls to mutual aid last year. And we provided mutual aid over 200-300 times. So we're paying back in surrounding communities 6-1, conservatively 30-1, pretty easily. So having that resource is just useful to have, but it also opens up to the state task force, so our members can get more experience, more knowledge, free at the cost of the task force, and bring it back to Verona to further provide, support to the township. And it's kind of irresponsible to not forward promote the volunteers as all the squads throughout the state are closing on a regular basis. But I appreciate your support for it thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tempest. You were one of the several that I was worried about on that day at Claridge when it was 90-something.
Yeah, you and everyone else. Apparently some people that mind their business isn't respectable. I'm gonna sure. My life will do better.
Thank you.
It's all good. And you guys want to hear from me.
Okay, we're done with this. I will turn it back to the mayor for.
Okay, so, thank you very much. We had our general public comments. So at this time, it is time for the consent agenda. We can move the consent agenda. We have 2 items of 2 minutes. We have 4 resolutions and no like 2 things. Leave the consent agenda. Is there a second? I'll second the consent agenda. This time I'll call for public comment on the consent agenda. And public statement applies. We have Ms. Pearson. Yeah, Ms. Pearson, just name and town of residence, please.
Jessica Pearson, good evening, Verona. I am calling in this evening to support tonight's resolution opposing Senate Bill 2347. I've done a great amount of research on this. I spoke with Mr. Frank Marshall from the League of Municipalities, who also expressed that the league did not look kindly or favorably upon this bill because it undermines a locality's ability to set their own parameters and protect their community. This model ordinance is very unclear. He agreed with me on a number of the provisions that lacked a great deal of clarity. But the one thing that really upsets me is the new impervious surface that this will add in light of this council's just passing an enhanced stormwater control ordinance, which was customized for the needs of our flood-prone town. Last year, this council also sent the state resolution against overriding a more strict provision for stormwater in our town. And that was sent to the entire New Jersey legislature, as well as, I believe, the league. If you look at the numbers, clearly, and Mr. Marshall agreed with me, this does increase impervious surface on our lots. And I'm going to break it down really quickly. In Verona, the definition of buildable space, as is provided in the bill, is 20 to 25% of each lot, depending on which residential zone you're in. So in an R100 lot, if you have 12,000 square feet, 2,400 is 20%, and then you take 60% of that 20%, and you're adding an additional 10% of impervious coverage. But I just want to be clear, that percentage rises as each property becomes smaller until you get up to a minimum of 18% increase on the smaller R40 and R50 zones in town. That's close to a 20% increase in allowable coverage. And the ordinance itself, or the model bill, does not say that we have to limit how big that buildable space, or the percentage, that 60% of buildable space. It clearly says that municipalities aren't held to limit the ADU to 60% of buildable area. It says that they may allow a municipality to limit the maximum size of an accessory dwelling unit separately from the primary to that square footage that is not in excess of 60%. So you may. And this does not include any off-street parking or turnaround space on any lot. So all I can say is very much in favor of the resolution. And I really hope that this council, who just took the time to read through quite a few documents on stormwater, to strongly consider voting yes for this resolution. And I thank you.
Pearson. Mr. Ryan.
Great.
You did have a hand up.
Did, yes.
It looks like it. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Just a quick comment on the resolution regarding the area of need of rehabilitation. I would hope that at some point you would be able to maybe ask our public information officer to sort of clarify the difference between an area in need of rehabilitation and an area in need of redevelopment. This stuff gets quite wonky, I will use that expression, when the presentation is made, and I think it would be helpful if a sort of a more general explanation could be put out to the public, just a suggestion, as you go through this process. The second thing there, I think this is part of your consent agenda, was the appointments to the planning board. I do notice you had one appointment down there, but there are 2 vacant slots still left open. I just wanted to point out that the planning board is going to be going into a sort of very, very active next few months. And, I think we're sort of dangerously close maybe to not having a quorum at certain meetings. So I would encourage you to really consider making the additional appointments as ASAP. And that's my suggestions. Thank you.
Mr. Ryan. Any further public comments? Ms. Petrangeli.
I just want to say one. Verona, New Jersey. I just want to comment on one quick thing, the deed restriction with the stormwater. I'm a surveyor. To deal with the deed and restrictions on that is very hard to get off. Right now, you guys are dealing with a resident in town who has a conservation easement on their property that was put there by a previous homeowner. And if you put a conservation easement in, you cannot fence it in. So if you were to put that patio in and the runoff there and you have a fence, you now have to take that fence down because we're not allowed to fence in a conservation easement. So that would impact a lot. Then in order to remove that deed, the restriction on the deed, you need to do a whole bunch of paperwork, a whole bunch of title research that is just ridiculous for the homeowner to put in something on their deed. When you finish a build or a pool, patio, anything, usually you can get a final as-built, and that goes on record with your survey, which goes on record in the town, which you should have. There are many ways to record infrastructure and how it is people are putting their drains out. I know right now the new ordinance is no sub pumps draining onto the streets. Now, if you drive up and down the street, it's all over. So basically, the stormwater, it has to go somewhere, but if you make a conservation easement and a deed restriction, you're screwing yourself and you're not gonna be able to sell your home. It's gonna be just hurt the resident more and more. So I think there's other ways to get around that. That's it.
Mr. Petrangeli,
Keep it short.
being no further comments, I will close public comment at this time. I just did want to respond to Ms. Pearson's comments in a second, but I did want to Ryan's, we did receive 2 applications for the zoning board of adjustment, and we'll be discussing those appointments and new business. In response to Ms. Pearson, I have to agree with you on your statements, and I appreciate the time and energy that you put into researching this as well. I'm going to provide a little background on well, actually, I'll ask if anybody has any specific response first to any of the public participation. I'll take that and then I'll.
Also just kind of comment on ADUs in general, as I've researched this quite a bit. We've gotten some public comment on both in favor and against. It's kind of interesting every time that, we hear that New Jersey is a home rule state, and every time the state wants to make some law not to allow us to control zoning ordinances or to otherwise have to comply with things that are the opposite. And we've looked at ADUs, we've talked about them. Verona offers a huge variety of housing types. We have high-rise condominiums, we have older garden style apartments, we have townhouses, we have single-family homes, there's duplexes, there's plenty of older and new rental stock. I don't see a solution that ADUs are creating specifically in Verona itself. I do see them creating more problems with parking in particular, as you'll both end up with more cars on a lot, and you'll end up with people trying to convert spaces currently used for parking into livable space. And we have a challenge here. I mean, we've had a rapidly growing population. We've had a lot of people push back against a lot of multifamily. So I know some people see this as a financial opportunity to make some more money off of their own property, but if we want to consider ADUs, we should consider them at the Verona level. I really don't like the concept of the state mandating them, but just in general, it would be a big hurdle for me to consider ADUs as something that's right for Verona. So I'm proud to support this opposition in our resolution.
Thank you. Councilman McGrath.
Thank you. Mayor, I actually request that we remove K3 from the consent agenda so that we can vote on it separately.
The consent agenda was already moved. So yeah, that's out of our process. But we can certainly do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll have to remove the consent agenda with POTUS. And then we can discuss that. But in the future, anybody who would like something removed needs to have it done before the motion occurs.
Mayor, thank you for that. If you wouldn't mind then pausing just a moment, I just wasn't fast enough before things were moved and seconded, and I didn't want to interrupt because I know that we've also been spoken to before about not interrupting, and so I just lost because it went so quickly. So thank you for that
I've
clarification.
also had council members let me know in advance that they to pull a resolution, and that's a very easy way of doing that as well.
Okay, great. I would like to make a comment on K1. I think the dates in the whereas are possibly reversed or incorrect. Because it's saying that we referred the study report to the planning board, happened after planning board returned the resolutions.
I think the first one's January, not February.
Is that?
Where that's not yeah, look at that stuff.
Just want to make sure we get it right.
these are,
Third from the last page.
yeah, these are wrong. It's supposed to be today, well, yeah, it's supposed to be today's dates.
Right.
Because you're passing the resolution now referring the study back to the planning board. So whereas on it's today's date, the governing body referred the study and its resolution in draft, draft form for review and comment, where's the better determining? It lasts.
The first one.
Okay, while he's looking at that, I just want to make a general comment on our process for this area in need of rehabilitation. I would have preferred, we talked about this in new business, and let it marinate in the community for a 2-week period of time before we then officially pass this resolution and send it to the planning board. I think, again, this is going to generate some questions. So for the administration, be ready. I think when they hear that we are declaring all of Bloomfield Avenue as an area of need of rehabilitation, it does generate like a lot of chatter. So in the future, I would have preferred a little bit of a breathing room pause and also a heads up to our Chamber of Commerce, many of whom own these businesses, because they're going to have some questions. So maybe a proactive outreach to them so they understand and so that they're aware of the planning board process so that they can participate there. So
this resolution is actually the resolution that you do after the study goes to the planning board. There was another resolution that's supposed to be on right now. The only thing you're doing is resolving to send it to the planning board for their review and comment. They have not yet seen the study yet. So in this form, it should be passed. What should be passed is, I'll call it the top half of the resolution. And today you are referring to study, which is this 6 whereas, right? 2, 4, 6. Whereas on today's date, March 11th, 2024, the governing body is referring to study and this resolution in draft form to the planning board for review and comment. So what you're doing now is you're sending the study to the planning board for review and comment. It will then come back to you, and then you'll pass the resolution that is in the form that you have before you. If you want, am I saying
so
that?
we're taking this whereas out,
You're taking that
the
whereas.
second one with the D.
The 6th one.
Taking out the 7th.
You're taking out the 7th. The 6th one is today's date, because today's the day that you're referring it to the.
What's
the board.
draft form?
Well, I'll make sure the resolution reads properly, but the action you're taking today is referring this to the board. They have not yet seen it yet.
Councilor, I mean, the way that I read this resolution, the resolution actually creates the area in need of rehabilitation. So we should not, we should essentially draft a resolution from the floor here to refer the study of the area in need of rehabilitation to the planning board with this attached as a proposed resolution and let them return it with comment.
That's correct.
So it doesn't look like that resolution. We have to rewrite that resolution completely. It doesn't look like it.
Simple resolution referring this to the planning board is all you want to pass.
Then, so the consent agenda has already been. We want to exit the consent. How procedurally?
So, who moved the consent agenda?
I believe I did.
If you want to
amend my motion,
amend your motion to move the consent, well, basically K2 and K4 as the consent agenda. We'll do a separate motion to walk on a referral to the planning board, and then we'll discuss K2. K3 separately as well. So if you would like to amend your original motion to adopt only K3 and K2 and 4.
I will amend my resolution regarding the consent agenda to only include the minutes, K2 and K4, and we have no licenses and permits. So those will be only.
Thank you. And who seconded the original motion?
You did.
Okay, thank you. I will second the revised motion. Is there any further discussion on those topics? Just basically K2 and K. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, poll.
Well, I don't even know what it's. Okay, Councilwoman Holland.
Yes.
Yes. Councilman Roman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Mike,
Yes.
Mayor Tambora. Congratulations, 2 and 4. Resolutions 2. Number 24-55. K4 will be number 2024-56.
Can't recognize this councilman.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to refer H2M Associates study the Bloomfield Avenue corridor as a potential area in need of rehabilitation, as well as a draft resolution to be considered for passage to the planning board for their consideration and
Thank you. I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll. I'm sorry, Well, technically, we already had public comment on this, so.
Councilman Holland,
Yes.
Actually, I'm sorry, we didn't have public comment on the walk-on, so I'm open for public comment at this time. Any public comments on this resolution? Hearing none, I'm closing public comment now, Madam Clerk.
hold on,
I already voted.
I know I'm not.
Okay.
Councilwoman,
Yes.
Councilman Roman. Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tambora.
Yes.
Do I number this reso
Sure.
as a draft?
No, this is a real resolution they just passed.
As a draft?
I'll send you the resolution in the morning.
Okay, it's,
Number it.
Yeah, it gets a number. It's a regular resolution we just passed. And I'll draft the words.
number-
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move resolution K3.
Okay. I will second resolution K3. Now it's time for public comment on resolution K. Which is the opposing Senate Bill S 2347. Hearing none, close public comment. I'm gonna make some comments on this first. I appreciate this being on the agenda. This is probably one of the worst pieces of legislation that has been proposed in Trenton in a long time. For several reasons, and I think they were very well captured in the ordinance. So I do want to go through a couple of those concerns. Let me just respond to some public comment that we've gotten. The first is that effectively what the legislation as it's proposed is suggesting is that the state once again can circumvent local zoning regulations by having as it's all zoning that gives municipalities very little ability to decide what happens in their municipalities. Local municipalities elect councils for the purpose of adopting zoning laws to represent the council. So structurally, this bill is problematic. This council on multiple occasions has had to hear and vote on required ordinances from the state, which I consider a pretty drastic overreach on the part of the state on many things. Our zoning ordinances do not allow for accessory dwelling units as they stand. When the master plan was designed, accessory dwelling units were specifically excluded from the master plan. Those who have read the master plan will note on the public comment and public survey part of it that a majority of the residents of the municipality were against the inclusion of accessory dwelling units. Verona is a small town with a major flood problem. Certainly people changing existing structures wouldn't cause that as much, but somebody decided to build a structure under zoning regulations that we did not agree to could potentially cause a significant problem as far as drainage, additional cars and parking. We're going to create that as well, problems in our neighborhoods. And as the resolution points out, it does put another strain on emergency services by increasing population. We are pretty densely populated as it is. We are building large structures, including a completely affordable housing structure. building another large apartment complex, and there's some more in the works coming out. We do not have a shortage of housing in Verona that this would solve. And I'm not prepared to abdicate this council's responsibility to be responsive to our residents as far as ensuring that they live in a town of the character that they're looking to establish. So this is incredibly structurally flawed and creates major problems within our areas. And I am deeply concerned about this happening. I would like to respond just to a couple of public comments that were sent to us by email. Somebody brought up that other municipalities do this, like Princeton Town is a combined municipality. Well, the lot sizes in Princeton are much higher. And people sent us comments about accessory dwelling units. This resolution does not address the question necessarily of Verona accessory dwelling units. This resolution addresses the question of the state forcing Verona to allow for accessory dwelling units against our own zoning code. And that is problematic. And I would find it difficult as a member of this governing body who was elected directly by the citizens of this town to not contest this overreach by the state government. And frankly, I would be very deeply concerned of any of the members of the governing body not supporting this rejection of the bill, as it has been the will of the town, not only clearly through the master planning process, but also this was a topic of significant conversation in the 2021 election as well. So I think the ordinance is well stated in its opposition. And I think that we really need to exercise our rights as a governing body to be heard by the state level officials, all of them, and move forward with that as well. Councilman Roman?
I don't need any.
Deputy Mayor?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I wish I saw this resolution prior because I would like to add another whereas to it, but I'm going to just state it rather than try to change anything. One thing that should be noted here is that adding additional dwelling units that are market rate will increase our need for additional affordable units in future rounds. Adding ADUs to the township will only exacerbate every single problem that we've had and everything we talk to residents about. I'm kind of shocked that people would be in favor of this. I mean, we have severe rainstorms and, you know, houses on Derwent, Brookside and Personette and East Reed flood. And we go out and we help those people and, you know, we do our best for them. Being there the day of a flood, it may help them a little bit. It really does nothing for them. This is what, and this is how we can protect our constituents, is to not allow some of these things happen. I'll go to some emails we got. Well, if you add impervious surface, you can require a rain garden. Well, in this bill, it actually says you can't impose any financial burdens on anybody who wants to put it in. So obviously someone can argue with their attorney that, oh, I can't put a rain garden in because I got to build this unit and I'm not going to be able to afford a rain garden. I actually went through this probably 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to bore everybody. I have a whole page of notes. I can start right from the beginning on page 2. Accessory dwelling units are a valuable form of housing and present a way to expand the state's housing supply. I agree with that. That is both cost effective and consistent with sound planning and environmental principles. It's not consistent with sound planning and it's not consistent with environmental principles. As stated in the resolution, there are many things in there that just are in the face of sound environmental principles. And as stated already, it's in our master plan, so it goes against our planning that many people in the town actually participated in and were against. I can go on and on. Every single paragraph on this first page Accessory dwelling units provide housing for family members, the elderly, in-home healthcare providers, individual with disabilities, yes, and others, often at below market prices within existing neighborhoods and at no cost to municipalities. And they're not, nothing in this ordinance states you have to make these units affordable. So if I'm gonna change my garage into an apartment, first of all, it's gonna cost upwards of $100,000, maybe $150,000 to do it. If anybody does that, if you think they're gonna put a low income house there and not get market rates for that apartment, that's crazy. And the way this is written, I can go on and on. I'm telling you every single paragraph. I wrote notes for everything. I'm not going to bore everybody with it, but if you really pick this apart, it's a very, very not well written bill. And let's say we get emails. Oh, well, Montclair has them. Maplewood has them. Montclair passed them last year. South Orange, I believe, was one of the emails. These are towns that have a rail system that go through it. Their mass transit is far better than what Verona is. And yeah, then maybe you can put one of these units there. And I looked at Montclair's. Montclair actually limits the unit to 800 square foot, where this ordinance, I actually kind of want to, if I can find it and go to the right page, on page 9 of this bill, I wish someone proofread it and really changed things in here. Line 43 and 44. Yeah, I'm going to take time to do this. The minimum floor area required, if any, shall be no greater than 300 square feet. So you're gonna make an apartment less than 300 square foot. And in 45, 46, the maximum floor area requirement, if any, shall be no smaller than 1,200 square foot. Okay, they probably should be reversed, but let's say this is the law, then Montclair, who we know really probably researched when they did it, they put a maximum of 800 square foot, so they'll have to change and increase theirs. There's all these things throughout this entire bill that I am just totally against. So I will end it there so I don't bore people further, but there's so many things in this that are just not good for the township of Verona.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Again, there's been a constant theme of tonight. I really feel that this resolution actually should have been in new business so that we could have had a thorough conversation. Obviously, there are certain members of the governing body that are really upset with this introduced bill. I do know, and I did see that the League of Municipality opposes it, as do I, on the fact that it overrides home rule and overrides our zoning. But the League opposes many bills, and generally we follow League of Municipality recommendations. They are not focused on this bill. If they raise the alarm for us on bills where they want us to pass sample resolutions, in fact, they write them for us. They have been doing webinars on Oprah reform, on the general affordable housing legislation that was actually today having testimony, and other matters. This has actually not risen to the level of the robust conversation that we're having today. I do want to thank the residents who sent us emailed comments. I thought they raised really good points, but I know from myself, from knocking on thousands of doors in Verona and speaking in particular to our senior citizens, they are very concerned about staying in Verona and having a place to live. They will not qualify for the new affordable housing that we are building. And there is actually not enough housing stock in our community to have flexible options. In addition, I want to thank Kate Kelly, who is an expert in her field on housing in New Jersey, for specifically highlighting how this can also help families with a disability. And so, you know, while I'm not for this legislation, I'm certainly not going to sign on to this very lengthy ordinance that I don't see being backed up with studies and research. Now, if those studies and research are out there, I would love to read them. But instead, I've been provided with a lot of information on the benefits of ADUs. Again, it's not in our master plan. I'm not saying I'm for this bill, but I'm not going to sign on being against it. And I think we do in the future need to follow our processes by discussing these more complex matters in new business first. Thank you.
Councilman.
Sure, I would just make note, just for clarity, that municipalities only have the authority that has been delegated to us by the state legislature. We do not independently have our own powers. So to the extent that earlier statements regarding home rule were to indicate that somehow we have greater power and that the legislature then takes it away from us, it's actually the opposite in the state of New Jersey. That's why we do have all of these laws that govern what we do, whether it be the local public contracts law, the municipal land use law, or any of the other different statements of law in, I believe it's Title 40A, that governs what we do as a municipality. I particularly agree with several of the statements that were made about this legislation being poorly drafted. I do think it is potentially an overreach. But I do also recognize that there would have been a value of more robust discussion. I think we've actually talked at length tonight, but like I would have liked to perhaps had an opportunity where the two experts that did comment to us in writing had an opportunity to perhaps talk to our representative from the Environmental Commission, so that there could perhaps have been a meeting of minds, and maybe that would have contributed to the drafting of this resolution. Because we didn't have that opportunity, and because this is still in process, I'm not really comfortable with moving forward with this resolution this evening. And so that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments from Councilman Holland and McGrath about process and about so on, but legislation moves quickly and through committee and into the legislature often when it is something that's a pet project of our powerful people in Trenton. So that's addressing this matter quickly is of the essence. I have to chuckle a little bit about a statement that we didn't have a robust discussion when we've had a significant discussion during this meeting with council comments on this resolution. And so I think we absolutely did have a robust discussion. I'm not sure how more robust it would have been in new business. But at the same time, it doesn't require really anything beyond a simple understanding of government to understand that this is bad legislation that will badly affect our residents. And I'm deeply concerned that we do not have full council support on this, especially when council members have made statements they don't agree with it, but they also won't say that to the state. And what all that does is it undermines our ability to influence legislation on the state level when people can equivocate in such a manner. And honestly, I think our residents deserve it. Madam Clerk, to call the roll, please.
Councilman Holland,
No.
Councilman McGrath,
No.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor. Right, K3 will be numbered 2024-58.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. At this point, we do have we have an addendum. We're having gotcha. Okay, this is for our council appointments on the addendum for the first is the Verona Cedar Grove Flood Control Advisory Board. Do I have a motion on M1A? So motions by the councilman, second. I'll second it. This by the deputy mayor. This time we'll call for public comment on the council appointments. Hey. Hearing no public comment. I will close public comment. Any discussion on if you want. What's that? Read the name. The name is for John Lacresto. So as the public member. Councilwoman Holland is the council designee, and Mr. Giacco sits on the Birds and Social. Yes. Mr. Giacco is sitting on, as well as our township engineer. Yeah. Okay. Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, declare the vote, please.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Everyone's passed 5-0.
The next item is the zoning board of adjustment appointments. We have 3 vacancies at the moment. It would be 2 public member positions and 1 alternate position. Current member and former mayor Kevin Ryan, who was currently an alternate, has requested to be moved to a public member, a voting member for the unexpired term ending 6/30/20. Have 2 requests that came in from community members, Bill Cortes and Dr. Edith Reese. At this point, 1 would fill in the public member and 1 would fill in the alternate position. I'm going to put forth Mr. Cortes. I will move him for the public member. Is there a second? I'll second that one. House. Okay, the second is by the Councilman Roman. Is there any discussion on? Well, I guess we'll leave it there until we get them all at one time. Okay. Yes, Councilwoman.
I'm just wondering, since Dr. Reese has prior experience, why she would not be a good choice to be the public member. She has prior experience on planning board for multiple years.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I will put forth Dr. Reese. The mayor has the appointment apparently for the alternates, so I'll do that separately. We'll hear any other discussion on the public member for Kevin Ryan. Bill Cortes. Very not, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
No.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor Portman.
And as mayor, I'm appointing Dr. Edith Reese to alternate number 1 for the unexpired term ending 6/30/2024. Okay. And
Sorry.
moving on to any other items of new or unfinished business. Councilman McGrath had previously requested an agenda item, emergency services complex. Councilman.
Thank you. I had received, I received a phone call on Friday, sort of as a byproduct of the Claridge meeting. And I realized as I was talking to this resident, I was really confused on the process. I couldn't answer all of her questions. And I couldn't even really answer her questions on what the process is that the council is following in order to get this building approved. Where I'm a little, I understand the public socialization of the building, and we sort of, I guess, implicitly, agreed for that to happen. In fact, I see a really lovely physical brochure that was created, and it really does explain the need quite nicely. We as a governing body have not actually taken any formal action to, first of all, agree that we're moving forward with this combined building. We really only had 1 public meeting where we saw the design. We haven't commented actually at all on the design as a governing body. We haven't made any adjustments, and I'm confused when that's going to be. And so my request of this governing body and the administration is that we, between now and the next meeting, we do kind of delineate a process. Because I feel like, and then we're also not discussing the costs at all with the public. And that's troubling because the costs are really significant. In fact, Councilman Roman earlier in this meeting said we are a small town. And this is actually a really big building. And while I appreciate it's good to get some feedback early from residents, I'm a little concerned we're giving the impression that the governing body is like ready to move forward with what was presented once to us when we didn't actually have any follow-up conversations. So I do have, I have transparency concerns. I have concerns about a lot of these meetings that are happening and what the iterative process is going to look like.
I'll turn to Mr. Yarko in a second. I'm just gonna touch on the transparency piece for a second. I think what Mr. Diarco is trying to do with having these meetings is be transparent and bring the issue to people. As we know, our council meeting attendance is light. It's fall, and some folks at home. And I really actually applaud. I wasn't aware of the Claridge meeting, and that may be something to work on. It's letting us know when these meetings are going to be, and if we want to show up, we can show up. But I think it's important that, and it's actually very proactive, Mr. Diarco, for you to bring this to the public to get feedback. My understanding of Mr. Diarco's process, based on what he explained to us during the manager's report, was that he is bringing this out, sharing the concept plan, which is what we have at this time, and getting resident questions that we can act on. In fact, Mr. Diarco said that there may be some recommendations moving forward. So at this point, we have heard a concept plan. We are in the process of looking at funding sources. We have met with legislators and anybody that we can talk to as far as getting some funding. But part of the deal is, before we can decide what we actually want to move forward with, we need to have enough feedback on the concept plan in order to do that. And I think that's the stage we are in. And I thought that was very clear in Mr. Diarco's presentation, but I'll let you go forward if you have any.
No, that was the intent. The council was to approve the purchase of property, which we did, purchase the property after a year of looking for property. So we were reaching out to the public as your meetings are, and the questions that come in are limited. And part of this approach was to reach out into the community as best I can to let the entire community know what you're actually planning. Claridge reached out here with a specific request, not to offend the council, but specific request was for the administrative team.
No politicians allowed.
Kind of a delicate way to say that.
It's like the sign on a treehouse.
Yes, and they literally asked for management. Wanted to understand the purchase of the property. They want to understand the issues relative to the buildings, how it's going to impact their neighborhood. They referred to Claridge as their residential neighborhood. Questions that came up, and I did speak to a lovely lady today, who's 104 years old, lives there. And some questions were questions coming up that we may not have thought of that would come up, and now we're addressing those questions from the Claridge. The process moving forward would be more outreach to the public. Obviously, the council has to make their decision moving forward of what you're actually doing, but we've kind of paved the way for. I asked the council to reach out to the elected officials. I don't do that. Administrations and elected officials are normally separate. I asked the council to do that. You did. We've had them in because we're asking for earmarks. Like every project I've done so far is, what should the project look like? Public needs to have input on it. Then we get to a number it could be. I already have a breakdown on that project, which is different than what was announced by our architect. But then that'll be a session for the council in closed session. But I'm also putting together the feelers in reaching out into the corporate end of what kind of financial support can you get for this project, which is pretty unique in the state, to say the least. And staff is now working. The next meeting is with Unico. I mean with Lions. The next meeting is with Lions to go over. It'll be a condensed version of the hour-long one. A meeting with Lions, so they'll reach out into the community that they know in town on what the project is. Where we reached out for Unico. We quite didn't get that meeting yet. There's a number of other organizations, and then there'll be a town-wide meeting at the community center. And then we'll see what we may be missing or not missing. I think by the time I get to that meeting, we'll have almost every question that we didn't anticipated. And then we are the staff is amassing the corporate sponsors that we can literally sell sponsorships within the building. There's a lot of opportunities. Sponsorship, we've added a sponsor board that was a suggestion and be a digital board for sponsors. There's a potential of sponsoring specific rooms. Example, the virtual firing range is a very real possibility that can be sponsored by a number of the companies that are involved in that. That would be on the wall in the sponsor. You do have some community rooms in the building, which were with public space. So we're looking at alternatives to drive your costs down, like the other projects we've done with grants that we can get. The grant team, the staff is working aggressively at that. The solar is being explored for the roof, and talking on that point. A solar on a building that's going to be built is literally can incorporate the roof itself, which would take a piece off of this project. I've already met with our representative in PSE&G so that we can incorporate every energy efficiency and see what support we could get out of PSE&G. It's a very accelerated schedule, needless to say. But until I can really comfortably tell you what we can bring in that drives the cost down, that would make it more attractive to you on behalf of the public taxpayer. That's the stage on that public meetings going forward. We need to reach out into the community more.
Thank you, Mr. Giarco.
Do you want?
I just had a question.
Councilman Holland.
Sorry, you mentioned some of the different organizations. Are the women's club or the junior women's
On my
club
list.
on your list? Okay, thank you. Sorry, they hadn't been mentioned and I was just kind of.
It's every organization that I know of that's in town through staffs. Those are the ones I want to reach out to and meet with them. So it just keeps spreading through the town.
No, that's great. Thank you.
They really need to understand how severe your problem is. Also.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Giarco, for outlining that process. I think I would like to see a quarter by quarter kind of estimate on when certain milestones are going to be met. So right now you're in the meeting phase. You're also looking at sponsorships. That's where I felt, and whenever you talk to a resident and they're asking a question and in the back of your head, you're like, I should be able to answer this, but actually I can't. It's not a great feeling, but she was lovely. The resident from LeClaire, I had a great conversation with her. But I think a quarter by quarter estimate on when certain new phases of the project will be reached, and where are you anticipating at this point decision milestones for the council, a second draft maybe of the building? Because again, we had a robust conversation. I also would say, I think this is the time to do a block meeting for the residents that live near the building and flyering them and reaching out to them specifically. I also would encourage you could do an open session, yes, at the community center, but also at the Verona Public Library, which is another great space. So I totally appreciate all of the effort, but I would like before the next meeting to just have a greater sense of your thoughts on the timing.
And the milestones are kind of crushed together. I'm working on multiple pieces of the pie with staff all at the same time and with the architect. We just adjusted the presentation slides because we added what was missing. We added, when we came out of the Claridge meeting, we added that slide, a slide where the property exactly is in proportion to the Claridge and the distance from that really going in. It's almost sometimes you're working on a project so much you don't see the trees from the forest. So as we have these meetings and more questions come up and literally I'm going, that's a great question. Question came up about The sirens, reaching all the way up to the hill, which that lovely lady pointed out. And she would like to sit at a pool and not hear the sirens, but the pool for Claridge 2 is behind the building. So I don't think it's gonna hit, but it's important to be able to answer those questions intelligently, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
But we are gonna run some tests so that we can accurately answer the questions about sirens, even though we'll put procedures in place, they'll be outlined as we go forward. But
And I'm sure the rest of the governing body agrees, we would love a short memo on each one of your major meetings, because then as we get resident feedback, we know real time, oh, this was discussed. So that we're not blindsided as members of the governing body.
understood.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll shake out most of those questions so that when I give you all that information, it's not floating, it's more concrete.
Thank you. My concerns have been addressed, so thank you, Mayor, for having this conversation as part of your business. Thank you.
I'm sure Kevin will prepare a excellent report on the stages of this project.
Is there any other business? I do just want to address one thing before we open public comment. There was a comment made in Councilman Holland's council comments about equal time for silver and gold awards for the Girl Scouts. In my time as mayor, I've never been invited to a silver or gold award ceremony. And in fact, my team on the council, I've never been invited to a silver or gold award ceremony. So when that does happen, and we are notified of them, any Girl Scouts achieving the gold award distinction, which is the rank comparable to the Eagle Scout, would of course be treated in the same way, receive a proclamation. So I encourage all Girl Scout leaders to reach out and let us know, just as the Boy Scouts do when their members are achieving such high distinctions, because I would just love to celebrate with them, as many of them are my students. And one of the best things that I think I can do as a mayor or a council member is attend to those milestones. And at this time, I will call for public comment on any item. Same public comment statement applies. My computer died, so somebody's gonna have to let me know if anybody from home is calling in.
There's no.
Okay.
No,
No, you're just.
Sorry. There is.
Mr. Ryan.
Myself, good evening, Kevin Ryan, Verona, New Jersey. Just a couple of quick comments regarding the issue that you just discussed regarding outreach to the community over the possibility of building a public safety building. I will say that my experience on the council very early on was when we were building the famous Liberty and Freedom Field complex. And it was very contentious. There was a lot of misinformation floating around. There were certain community groups that had more influence than others. So I would like to compliment Mr. Diarco on accepting informal meetings with different community groups, just to outline where we are up to now. I did have the opportunity to listen in on the first presentation by the engineer, the architect. It was very informative. It was very long. I'm hoping that over the experience of time when you go before these individual groups, Mr. Diarco and company, that you can condense the the presentation as much as possible and just give folks the broad outline of where we're at and what we're trying to accomplish. By doing that, I think you will save yourself a lot of time down the road when you finally get to the fact of actually putting numbers on things. I mean, that's the fly in the room here. Everybody, I've had questions asked to me because from my prior experience on the council, well, when are they going to tell us how much it's going to cost? And I can appreciate the fact that you don't know yet. And hopefully, by taking this incremental approach, you will, ensure that you're being as transparent as possible with the public. Everybody loves the fields now, or not everybody, but a lot of people do. But that was the last project that it came even close to this this scope in terms of money. And I think back then, maybe 10 or 11 years ago, we were talking about maybe 12, $13 million. It wound up costing a lot more than that. I think Councilman Roman launched his political career as a result of his involvement in trying to figure out the cost of putting that complex together. So the more people in the community you can get to, to inform, the better. So hopefully your internal communications issues can be resolved. And I would hope that you would continue to take this approach towards educating the public on the need for this building and the long-term consequences of not having it, which is just as important as what it's going to cost to put it together. Thank you.
Right. Seeing no other public comments, I will close public comments at this time. We have a resolution that we have already approved to go into executive session. Will any official action be taken, Mr. Williams?
No action will be taken.
Thank you. We will see you all on the 25th of March. Same time, same station.